Hey friends, before we settle in for tonight's quiet journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you genuinely enjoy these slow, lulling dives into history. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always a gentle comfort to know who's drifting off beside us around the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan or the soft hum of a white noise app. Feel the day's tension melt away as we slip into the pale glow of candlelight, or the gentle hue of your bedside lamp. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the warm Sahara breeze brushing against your skin, carrying the faint scent of desert saffron and distant campfires. Tonight we begin with a story so inconspicuous it almost slipped through the sands of time, the lost silk weaver villages perched along the trans-Saharan trade routes. Picture a line of camels winding through ochre dunes at dawn, each carrying bolts of fine silk, glimmering threads born in far-off China, bound for the bustling markets of North Africa. But between those glistening hubs lay hidden settlements, villages that thrived on the hushed, nocturnal labour of weaving dreams into fabric. These were not grand palaces or marble minarets, but humble, clay-walled dwellings clustered around simple looms. Here, day after blistering day, families, often 3 or 4 generations under a single roof, warped and wefted silk into patterns both intricate and oddly serene, gentle geometrics that caught the sunrise like morning dew. By night, a single oil lamp would flicker in each courtyard, the steady clatter of shuttle against reed almost like a lullaby for the desert. You might think of sandstorms and scarcity, yet these weaver villages had quiet routines to protect their precious threads. Women would bury damp silk strands beneath cool earth to preserve their suppleness. Men climbed distant dole, unas at dawn to test the winds, reading the sky's colour for clues on humidity. When the caravan bells sounded each season, loaded camels paused at the village edge, never more than a dozen beasts at a time, lest the desert's secrecy be exposed to prying eyes. So as you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine the rhythmic chatter of wooden combs teasing out stray fibres, the hushed whispers between siblings trading stories of faraway markets, the gentle tension of warp threads under calloused fingers. But how did these tiny hamlets withstand the pressures of shifting sands, political intrigue, and the ever-looming threat of desert bandits? What secrets were woven into those silken tapestries, secrets powerful enough to change the course of empires, yet soft enough to whisper you to sleep? Foundations beneath the sands, dim the lights and let the hush of the desert wrap around you as we step back into the dawn of the 9th century. You stand on the crest of an ochre dune, the sun yet to spill its heat across the rippling sands. Below you lies a narrow ribbon of settlement, clay walls warmed by the waning night, flat roofs edged with simple palm thatch. These were the first silk weaver villages of the trans-Saharan trade, nestled between the Sahel's scrub brush to the south and the vast emptiness of the Sahara to the north. The story begins with a merchant caravan departing from Sijil Masa, the Moroccan outpost where gold, salt and European slaves mingled in dust-choked market squares. But among the camels loaded with gleaming ingots and salt slabs were bolts of silk, luminescent, delicate fabrics that had slithered across the known world by way of the Silk Road. For centuries, this silk travelled from Chang'an, modern Xi'an, in Tang, China, through Central Asian oases and Persian bazaars, until it reached North Africa's door. Yet between those bustling nodes lay little oases of their own, villages that transformed raw silk into something entirely new. These settlements sprang up where a hidden aquifer lay no more than 2 or 3 paces beneath the sands. Local Berber clans, some scholars think descendants of pre-Islamic Amazigh peoples, had long tapped these underground water sources to irrigate small date groves and millet fields. By the mid-800s, as the Abbasid Caliphate's influence waned and local dynasties rose in the Maghreb, itinerant silk merchants struck bargains with tribal sheiks, safe passage and water rights in exchange for shared access to precious silk. Thus, families built clay brick homes around communal wells, and the first looms appeared under village awnings. In these early days, you would awake to the soft thump of a weaver's shuttle greeting the warp threads. Faint puffs of palm fibre smoke curled from hearths where silkworms' cocoons were boiled, yielding filaments that glowed pale gold in morning light. Men and women worked side by side. Women sat cross-legged at low benches, feet pressing tension beams. Men tended the drying frames, brushing sand away from damp silk with bundles of goat hair twigs. Each step was a ritual of precision. Too much sun could fray the fibres, too little air could mould them. Families lived in compounds of 5 to 8 people, grandparents who measured humidity by the creak of wooden beams, children who learned to warp threads before they could read, and young apprentices whose nimble fingers darted beneath the shuttle like tiny desert lizards. They prayed at dawn for gentle breezes, at dusk for the soothing hush of night to calm the fibres. Friday afternoons were sacred, no looms clattered, and the village mosque, often no more than a mud-plastered room, filled with women's chants of thanksgiving and petitions for steady markets. By the 10th century, these villages formed a chain every 2 days' journey apart. Caravan scouts left markers, stacked stones or coloured cloth strips, pointing to hidden water caches and safe night camps. At each stop, the traders observed the same quiet patterns, the humming of looms at dawn, the midday lull when felled date palms shaded work courtyards, the evening market stalls where dyed silk, reds from local ochre, blues from imported indigo, was bartered for dates, oil, and sometimes camels. What set these weaver communities apart was not simply their proximity to trade, but their deepening expertise. Over generations, they developed a dye technique that combined crushed henna leaves with ash lye, producing a rust-brown hue that resisted fading in desert sun. They innovated a simple oil press, using ground carnelian weights to gently extract fibre-softening oils from sesame seeds. These tweaks cost extra labour, but made their silk coveted from Cairo to Gao. Tales even reached the Andalusian courts, silk that softened like a breeze against the skin, that caught the moonlight in a shimmer so subtle it seemed woven from starlight itself. Yet life in these villages remained austere. Grain stores were little more than sunken pits lined with date palm leaves, topped by clay lids weighted with stones. When the harvest failed, families rationed ground millet flour in daily thimble-sized servings. Elders recited oral chronicles, stories of caravans lost to sandstorms, of entire families perishing when water tables fell, of raids by desert brigands seeking merchandise or ransom. Every shadow on the dunes held the memory of survival's slender margin. Beyond labour and subsistence, social bonds ran deep. During the summer solstice, before the scorching winds of Sirocco swept in, villagers gathered at the well for a simple festival. Bread baked in sun-warmed clay ovens, goat milk curds pressed beneath date-wood weights, and music from reed flutes that carried across silent sands. Under a flat canvas canopy, mothers braided silk threads into children's hair, a sign of both pride and protection. 2 hours of communal laughter felt like a lifetime of relief against the desert's austerity. Trade caravans reinforced these connections. Passing merchants carried news of court intrigues in Kairouan, of renewed conflicts between the Fatimids and Abbasids, and of shifting alliances among Berber confederations. A rumour of a new tax on silk in Tripoli would send villages into discreet negotiations, perhaps storing surplus silk beneath clay floors until taxes eased, or rerouting caravans toward less scrupulous desert routes. Each decision shaped not only wealth, but survival. All the while, the desert pressed its own agenda. Over decades, subtle climatic shifts lowered the water table. Wells that once gurgled at 4 paces deep required lengthy digging to reach moisture. Sand dunes marched steadily toward the habitations, forcing villagers to construct low walls of bundled reeds and ostrich eggshell mortar. An exhausted weaver might pause midday to brace a wooden door against an oncoming drift, then return to untangle warp threads coated in fine grey powder. Religion intertwined with everyday toil. Friday sermons recounted verses celebrating patience and perseverance, virtues tested daily by wind-scoured looms and slender grain stores. Some weavers inscribed Quranic passages into the fringe of a silk border, a talisman of divine protection for the wearer. Others offered silent prayers into the loom's shuttle, believing that spirit of ancestors dwelled in the interstices of warp and weft, guiding each thread's path. Yet as these villages became more renowned, they also attracted unwanted attention. By the late 11th century, chroniclers in Marrakesh noted an influx of slaving expeditions coming from the north. Armed raiders disguised as merchants, their tents bursting with silk samples, would lure curious villagers outside their protective enclosures and then strike at night. The clatter of a stolen loom or the moans of captives in the dunes haunted every household. In response, tribal leaders formed patrols, wearing armour crafted from hardened goat leather and camel hide shields. Each patrol carried small crossbows, an uncommon sight so far south that required secret reloading rooms carved into the desert rock. Under threat of raid and with dwindling water, these settlements perched on the brink of change. Some families began migrating westward toward oases controlled by the rising Almoravid Empire, hoping for stronger military protection. Others clung to ancestral homes, weaving silk by torchlight through moonlit nights, determined to see one more caravan arrive. The desert, indifferent to these human dramas, continued its slow, inexorable march. And so we pause at this critical juncture. You've seen the first glimmer of bustling activity among clay-walled courtyards and felt the fine silk threads slipping through calloused fingers. You've sensed both the ingenuity that made these communities thrive and the fragility that lurked beneath every grain of sand. What will become of these hidden weaver villages as new empires rise and water grows ever scarcer? Will they adapt and endure, or will their looms fall silent beneath drifting dunes, their stories swallowed by the sands they once ruled? Weaving survival into destiny. As the sun rose on a cool morning in the early 12th century, the silk weaver village of Tazareen lay quiet beneath a thin veil of desert haze. You slip through the narrow alley between two ochre-hued homes, your sandals whispering against the packed earth floor. Overhead, palm frond awnings cast dappled shadows, and through the gentle murmur of a distant well, you hear the familiar staccato clatter of looms awakening. Today, the stakes feel higher than ever. For decades, Tazareen and its sister villages formed a lifeline between sub-Saharan traders bearing gold dust and North African merchants craving silken luxuries. But with the rise of the Almoravid movement in Morocco and the tightening grip of Fatimid power in Egypt, trade routes shifted. Caravans once guided by Berber scouts on trails east of the Atlas Mountains now skirted southward, a longer path but one offering greater security under Almoravid patrols. Tazareen's sheikhs negotiated tolls and promised military escorts. Yet the caravans came less often, each absence felt in every warp and weft. Inside a low-ceilinged weaving hall, Amina bint Rashid ties a fresh warp of undyed silk. She's slender, barely beyond childhood, yet carries the seasoned gaze of someone who has seen too many caravans delayed by sandstorms or stolen by bandits. Her grandmother, Fatiha, watches from a reed-backed chair, fingers intertwined over a faded cobalt scarf, one of the earliest goods dyed with the village's signature henna-ash blend. 3 seasons without the caravan, Fatiha murmurs, voice creaking like a well-oiled treadle. Our stores shrink faster than children's laughter at prayer time. Amina's shuttle arcs smoothly across the threads. We've learned to spin flax here, she replies softly, though her hands tremble. It's coarse, but we sold enough scarves at Sigil Massa last month to buy millet and oil. Fatiha's eyes drift to the small mortar in the corner, where sesame seeds await pressing. And flax weaves into fine enough cloth for traders. Amina pauses, fingers hovering over the threads. We've added a twist, silvered dust from cambered quartz. It glitters like silk in torchlight. They call it Desert Moon, and it fetches twice the price. Such ingenuity typified Tazareen's survival. In the past decade, weavers pioneered hybrid fabrics, silk blend cloaks using goat wool for warmth, dyed with madder root imported via Timbuktu, then overlaid with silken tassels. Each garment was an alchemy of local and foreign elements, a testament to adaptation under duress. Beyond the weaving halls, the village council convened under the shade of a massive acacia. 7 men and 2 women, all tribal elders and master weavers, sat cross-legged on rugs. Among them, the newly appointed sheikh, Yusuf al-Arabi, addressed the gathering. His voice carried authority tempered by the fatigue of sand-lashed nights. Fatimid taxes at Tripoli have doubled, he announced, yet our supplies run thin. We must decide, do we invest in more flax and quartz, or conserve our remaining silk for the next caravan? An argument swirled like a desert whirlwind. Omar, keeper of the water cistern, warned that the aquifer had sunk another half-metre this year. Drilling deeper risked collapse and the loss of the village's sole water source. Fatima, a master dyer, countered that without new dye materials their wares would lose their famed hues, and thus their value. Ultimately, Yusuf decreed a compromise: allocate 60% of remaining silk to hybrid fabrics, reserve 20% for raw silk to be bartered, and dedicate 20% of funds to secure fresh indigo supplies from Gao. Once agreements were made, emissaries, young men with caravans' roving instincts, prepared to journey westward under Almoravid escort, bearing wads of ostrich egg money and letters of credit etched on parchment. That evening, as the full moon crowned the horizon, women gathered by the communal well to wash warp threads in the cool water. Their whispered songs carried on the breeze, laments about children's hunger, prayers that bandits' eyes would glaze over at sight of their humble goods, and hopes that the indigo caravan would outpace the gathering storms. Each melody rose and fell with the waters lapping, a lullaby of endurance. But the desert offered neither promise nor pity. 3 nights later, sand-laden winds surged through the camps of the caravan guards, extinguishing lanterns and forcing the traders to huddle beneath frayed tents. When dawn broke, 2 camels lay half-buried, their silk-laden packs lost to the dunes. The surviving guards hurried back to Tazareen bearing news of disaster. In the council hall, faces turned ashen under oil lamp light. Yusuf's jaw clenched. "We cannot depend on distant powers for protection," he said. "Our future lies in our own hands." Thus was born the village guard, a makeshift militia of 30 keen-eyed youths trained under a weary but determined veteran. from Sigil Masa. They practiced with crossbows nightly, their bolts tested on clay targets coated with henna ash to mimic the hardness of a bandit's leather shield. They learned desert tracking, navigating by stars, and the dew patterns on scattered grasses. Meanwhile, Amina and Fatima devised a barter network with neighbouring agrarian villages. In exchange for flax, sesame and goat's wool, they would receive dried dates, ghee and powdered pigments. This microeconomy reduced reliance on the long-distance caravans, though nothing matched the gold and prestige that silk commanded. Still, each small trade stabilised Tazarine's subsistence and strengthened tribal bonds across the shifting sands. As seasons passed, the repeated sandstorms revealed an unexpected gift. Beneath the dunes, a forgotten underground cavern glistened with crystalline salt deposits. Word spread that a local farmer had pried open a rock fissure and uncovered sparkling veins. Yusuf saw opportunity. With the salt they mined, Tazarine could supply caravans en route from Takaza, famous for its pure salt, to interior villages desperate for trade goods. Teams of miners, men who once herded goats, descended into the cool rock chamber each dawn, chiselling salt slabs with chipped flint picks and hauling them to the surface on reed stretchers. The coarse salt brought instant barter power. A handful could secure a bolt of canvas, bundles of dates, or even temper the worst effects of thirst during brief caravan crossings. The miner's new role shifted village dynamics, whereas before every hand was measured by weaving skill, now even the least dexterous could earn grain by digging salt. Children cheered as they dragged tiny blocks to the drying racks, and women carried woven baskets spilling with salt crystals toward the market stalls. In hushed tones, people marvelled that the desert, the merciless force that swallowed so many, had supplied a lifeline. Yet wealth and security breed their own anxieties. By the mid-12th century, Tazarine's salt and hybrid silks attracted not only traders, but also the covetous gaze of regional warlords. Rumours circulated of mercenary forces drilling their own wells nearby, intent on commanding the salt chamber and prosecuting caravans that bypassed their territories. Messengers carried bribes and threats in the same satchel, gold coins that had touched Chowwei's courts, and letters sealed with the crest of an upstart emir. In response, the village guard expanded its remit. They dug narrower, concealed passages into the cavern, sealed the main entrance with sand-reinforced clay blocks, and scattered false trails above ground. Each warrior carried 2 swords, a brass dagger and a horn to signal alarm. Women trained in archery joined night watches, perching on clay-tiled rooftops beneath concealed awnings. One moonless night, a column of mounted raiders crested the dune ridge. Lanterns bobbed like distant stars, a glittering procession in the sable sky. The guards sprang their trap. Crossbow bolts cracked, horses reared, desert dogs howled. In the chaos, the warlord's banner, an ivory crescent upon black, tore loose and drifted into the looms of the courtyard. When dawn broke, 10 battle-worn captives lay bound beside camels stripped of saddlebags. The guards' victory bought Tazarine a year of uneasy peace, but the village trembled at the knowledge that their king Unning had not liberated them from fear, only delayed its return. Through these trials, the people of Tazarine wove resilience into their very sinews. They composed oral epics, long, winding ballads recounting the salt cavern defence, sung over crackling fires until the flickering flames seemed to flick through time itself. They carved small prayer talismans from quartz fragments, weaving them into loom fringes. New generations learned to read the sky not only for storms but for enemy scouts, and to adjust the colours of their silk to blend with sand so their caravans might move unseen. Yet as the 12th century waned, the world beyond Tazarine shifted again. The Almohad movement, born among the High Atlas tribes, spread a strict religious reform that refused to tolerate what it deemed distractions of luxury. In Marrakesh, edicts ordered courts to bar silk from turbulent southern provinces. Only wool and coarse cotton were lawful. Across North Africa, caravan masters remarked on the empty camel saddles once burdened with silk. Faced with the prospect of having to abandon centuries of tradition or to destroy their looms to avoid punitive fines, Tazarine's leaders deliberated. Should they smuggle silk under false covers, risk ocular inspections by Almohad guards, or embrace a new identity as salt merchants alone? The loom's rhythmic pulse echoed in every household, a stubborn reminder of lifetimes spent perfecting patterns. Yet survival demanded adaptation once more. Now, as you brush the fine grit of sand from your sleeve and look toward the horizon, imagine the loom standing silent beneath storage cloths, the wells echoing in empty courtyards. Picture caravans departing with crates of salt but no silken bolts, an end to an era spun through countless generations. Will Tazarine learn to thrive under the Almohad decree by transforming its identity wholly, or will the village choose to defy the edict and risk its existence for the sake of its ancestral craft? Threads of legacy. Night's velvet cloak had settled over Tazareen when the final council convened beneath the flicker of oil lamps. Looms lay dormant in silent courtyards, their warp beams wrapped in faded calico, as if the village itself held its breath. Outside, the warm wind carried a scent of ochre and date palm, sacred reminders of the land the people had wrested from desert desolation. Inside the mosque-cum-council hall, Yusuf al-Arabi stood before the sheikhs, master weavers, and the village guard's leaders. At stake was nothing less than Tazareen's soul. The Almohad edict was clear. Silk was a sign of the excesses of unbelievers and forbidden beyond the gates of Marrakesh. Caravans found their way barred, toll gates slammed shut. Remaining silent meant starvation for looms. Defiance meant destruction at the emir's whim. Yet this village had endured plagues of locusts, betrayals by caravans that vanished beneath the sands, and the ever-creeping danger of raiders. Could they now surrender the very craft that had woven their identity for generations? Fatiha, her hair streaked with silver and hands lined like palm leaves, leaned forward on her reed chair. Our looms have sung through droughts and raids. They sing the lives of our children, the wisdom of our elders. To silence them is to dig our own graves. A hush fell. Across the hall, Omar, the custodian of water, glanced toward the thick clay walls. Perhaps we shift. We do small panels, private commissions, hidden beneath wool linings. We train our sons and daughters in stealth. Fatima, the dyer whose hands still trembled when mixing indigo, shook her head. You propose that every weaver become a smuggler, that we live in shadows, always fearing discovery? Silence settled like sand in an abandoned well. Only the faint scrawl of Fatiha's prayer beads echoed in the stillness. In that moment, Amina rose, a young man once timid at the loom, now tempered by loss and triumph. I propose another path, she said, voice steady. We honour our ancestors by adapting. Salt has saved our lives. Our hybrid fabrics won renown. Let us abandon pure silk, but perfect our salt crystal textiles. Strengthen linen and goat hair blends with crushed quartz threads. Let every garment feel like Tazareen's resilience, not foreign luxuries. We will trade what the world needs, durable cloth that outlives sandstorms, and salt in every granule of its fabric. Murmurs grew into agreement. The hybrid cloaks, once necessity, would become signature. The salt-woven capes, stiff at first touch, but meant to soften with wear, could be embroidered with small silk insets, enough to honour tradition, not enough to attract the emir's wrath. Caravans would henceforth travel under neutral flags, bearing these robust textiles and salt panels to markets from Gao to Cairo, their secret silk accents hidden like a mother's lullaby beneath coarser cloth. Under Amina's guidance, workshops reopened at dawn. The looms, once silent, whispered again with new patterns, bold diamonds in madder red, interlaced with quartz filaments that glowed faintly in moonlight. Weavers learned to spin goat hair finer, to weave linen so tightly that sand could not slip through its mesh. Dyers experimented with desert blooms, salvia and lavender, for hues that spoke of both earth and sky. Even the village guard joined in, helping roll the heavier bolts to distant caravans under false labels of wool goods. Trade revived slowly. Caravan scouts, accustomed to silk's shimmer, adjusted to the weight and texture of Tazareen's new cloths. Some sniffed curiously at the quartz sheen. Many clapped their hands in delight at the blanket rigidity that made long desert rides bearable. Salt trades grew too. Merchants carried Tazareen's crystals as cures for waterborne, fevers in far-flung towns. When drought struck southern oases, these salt caravans supplied life-saving electrolytes for weary travellers. Over decades, the village changed, but its essence endured. Children were taught at the loom to sing the epic of the Salt Cavern defence, 7 verses in the Ajam dialect, 7 more in classical Arabic, so that every new weaver learned both history and language. Elders recited the tale of the Almohad decree alongside it, a sobering reminder that every advantage could vanish with a new wind of authority. By the mid-13th century, Tazareen's fame had spread beyond North Africa. European merchants from Sicily sent emissaries hoping to import the salt crystal textiles for their knights' cloaks. Scholars in Cordoba wrote of the village's ingenious adaptations in treatises on nomadic economies. Pilgrims on the Hajj heard rumours that these capes were worn by desert hermits, their hidden silk threads a secret blessing against sunstroke. Today, if you travel the trans-Saharan routes by dune or by sky, you will find descendants of Tazareen's original clans. Their compound walls are reinforced with limestone, their wells sunk deeper by mechanized pumps. Modern generators power electric looms beside traditional wooden ones. The salt chamber now feeds a small factory where textiles are blended with synthetic fibres, but in every bolt you still glimpse the ghost of quartz dust and the faint echo of a loom's shuttle. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine touching that fabric, its surface stiff, then softening like warmed parchment against your fingertips. Picture the tiny fragments of salt melting in your palm, a crystalline whisper of the desert's generosity. Feel the lineage of ingenuity that spans a millennium, how scarcity bred invention, how need wove survival into art, and how a community's identity could shift yet endure, much like the dunes that both threaten and sustain it. In our modern world of instant messaging and fast fashion, Tazarine's legacy reminds us that true resilience lies in adaptation, finding value in what remains when everything familiar has been stripped away. The story of these weaver miners carries on in every thread drawn tight against adversity, in every salt sparkle glinting under moonlight. May these echoes of sand, silk and salt lull you into reflection. How might your own life be rewoven if necessity demanded you abandon comforts you hold dear? And what hidden strengths would surface when the winds of change blow fiercest? Foundations of fleece and faith. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the rolling hills of 12th century Burgundy, where mist clings to folded meadows at dawn and the scent of dew-soaked grass mingles with the faint smoke of monastic fires. Here, beneath a rising sun that glows pale through drifting fog, you approach the newly founded Abbey of Fontenay, one among dozens of Cistercian communities that sprang up across Europe. Though the grand stone church may draw visitors' eyes upward, it is the plain, sturdy sheepfolds, walled enclosures by the stream, that truly shaped the daily life and economy of these remote enclaves. The Cistercians, reformers who sought a stricter, more ascetic monastic life than their Benedictine cousins, arrived in Burgundy in 1098. They favoured solitude and manual labour, believing that toil humbled pride and knitted the community into a single body of Christ. Their abbot, Robert of Molesme, decreed that each abbey must cultivate its own lands rather than rely on peasants. Thus began an era in which monks became stewards of fields, vineyards, and most crucially, sheep pastures. When you step through the abbey's simple gatehouse, you're greeted by the low murmur of chanting, psalms echoed across sun-baked cloisters. But beyond the cloistered walk, past the refectory's heavy wooden door, lies a different rhythm altogether, the bleating of sheep in the paddocks, the scraping of shepherds' staffs against packed earth paths, the dull thud of wool shears flicking through a fleece. These sounds form the true heartbeat of the Cistercian economy. Each abbey was allotted an initial endowment of land, often swaths of scrubby woodland and fallow fields donated by pious nobles seeking spiritual rewards. The monks cleared sections of oak and hazel to convert into grazing meadows. They built sturdy stone walls, chiselling limestone blocks by hand, and constructed simple wooden shelters for their flocks. A series of small, man-made ponds, fed by diverted tributaries of the Usha River, provided water not only for the monks' daily needs but also for washing fleeces during fulling later on. By the second decade of the 12th century, abbeys like Fontenay were home to flocks numbering in the hundreds. The monks selected hardy local breeds, sheep with coarse brown fleeces resistant to the damp Burgundian climate. Each spring, lambs were born in sheltered byres, kept free of predators by keepers who patrolled stone-paved lanes between pens. The abbey's cellarers, responsible for provisions, maintained meticulous records, noting each ewe's lineage, lambing date, and wool quality. These tallies were written in Latin manuscripts, their neat script a testament to the merging of scholarly devotion and agrarian management. You might imagine a life of pastoral idleness, but in truth, the work was relentless. By mid-June, the ewe's fleeces grew thick enough to require shearing. Under the direction of the senior monk shepherd, pairs of assistants, often lay brothers bound by vows, WWs, walked from sunrise until the church bells tolled for sext around mid-morning. They used large iron-bladed shears, held in both hands, to strip the fleece in a single sheet. The goal was to keep the wool intact, free of burrs and grass, an art that took years to master. Your fingers brush across a freshly shorn fleece, and you feel its coarse nap tinged with lanolin's earthy aroma. The sheared wool was immediately sorted, the finest locks reserved for cloaks and mantles, the coarser bits destined for sacks, ropes or floor coverings. Each grade was piled in wooden tubs by the washhouse, where water drawn from the nearest stream was heated over a low fire. Monks stirred the bright swirls of soapwort, a local plant, gauging its saponin content by the size of suds it produced. While the wool soaked, you wander beneath the abbey's arched portico and feel the damp stones beneath your feet. Above you, carved capitals depict the same simple geometric tracery found in the sheepfold walls, pillars and arches that mirror pastoral pens. In each intricately sculpted vine leaf, You sense the monk's belief that manual labour and spiritual contemplation were two sides of the same coin. After washing, the wool was laid on racks to drain in the sun. Monks turned it carefully, ensuring even drying and guarding against mould. This sun-bleached wool, now soft and pliable, would be ready for carding later in the abbey's workshop. There, pairs of wooden paddles embedded with iron teeth drawn from local forges teased fibres apart, aligning them into slivers ready for spinning. Spinning occurred year-round, often in cold, draught-shuttered rooms adjacent to the scriptorium. Lay sisters and ageing monks, whose eyesight no longer allowed them to illuminate manuscripts, gathered around the distaff. You can almost hear the gentle whir of spinning wheels, a sound as constant as the river's flow. Each tishanuchitas. Whist and tread delivered by a careful foot set the foundation for yarn strong enough to weave into the heavy, water-resistant cloth prized across Europe. Yet beyond the technical mastery, it was the Cistercians' organisation that turned wool into profit. Monastic agents negotiated contracts with cloth finishers, artisans in Dijon, Langres, and as far afield as Flanders. They bargained not only on price but on quality standards. A bolt had to withstand a standardised pull test. Its dye, often a rich brown or ochre achieved with iron-rich clays, had to resist sunlight without fading entirely. You stand in the abbey's chapter house, where daily readings of the rule were delivered. Here, the abbot spoke of stewardship as a divine trust. Surplus proceeds from wool sales funded the construction of infirmaries, supported alms for the poor in nearby villages, and subsidised the copying of holy texts. From the lofty pulpit of sacred stone, faith and fleece intertwined, each yarn a metaphor for the bonds of community, each delivered bolt of cloth, a testament to labour offered in service of God. By the mid-12th century, the Cistercians had become Europe's premier wool producers. Their model inspired lay landowners to emulate monastic techniques, reshaping the agricultural landscape. You can trace these echoes in the ridge and furrow fields of northwestern Europe, in the water-powered fulling mills that emerged along every stream. Yet this burgeoning success also sowed seeds of tension. Local secular lords, uneasy at monastic economic clout, began to impose tolls on abbey merchants. Guilds of urban weavers grumbled that abbey cloth undercut their prices. Some abbots debated whether such worldly entanglements detracted from the order's spiritual ideals. Within the cloistered walls, a silent question took hold. How much commerce could be reconciled with the vow of poverty? As dusk falls over the abbey's crenellated roofline, you glimpse shepherds guiding their flocks back to stone enclosures. Lanterns bob through the arched entrances, and the lowing of sheep drifts across the courtyard. A thin stream of smoke rises from the washhouse chimney, promising freshly warmed water and the next day's alchemy of soap and wool. And now you sense that this tale of sheep and shorn fleece is not merely an agricultural treatise, but a parable of adaptation. How a community bound by faith turned to the mundane task of sheep husbandry to sustain its spiritual mission. What challenges will arise as secular forces press upon monastic wealth, and how will the Cistercians reconcile their spiritual aspirations with the ever-growing demands of wool commerce? Commerce and conscience in the Cistercian lands. As dawn's cool mist lifts from the meadows, you find yourself once more wandering among the abbey's fields, this time guided by Brother Aurelian, the order's chief steward and engineer. His robes are dust-flecked, and around his waist hangs a leather satchel stuffed with rolled parchments, surveys of water channels, sketches of new fulling mill wheels, and columns of numbers tallying sheep counts and wool yields. Aurelian greets you with a nod, then leads you through the meadow gate where the flock grazes in neat stone-walled pens. The photographer in you notices how the dew clings to coarse brown fleeces like tiny prisms, yet your guide's concern lies elsewhere. Yesterday, he says, the Viscount of Seymour rode through, demanding a toll on every bolt of cloth that leaves our gates. You follow Aurelian along a narrow leat, an engineered channel diverting spring water from the Ouche River toward the abbey's new fulling mill. He explains that the Viscount's toll amounts to nearly a tenth of each shipment's value. To secular eyes, the abbey's wealth from wool commerce marks it as both boon and threat, the grain of prosperity that must be harvested not by divine charity but by feudal right. Yet the abbot has forbidden open defiance. The rule of charity demands that the poor not suffer. So, Aurelian continues, we adapt by adding value closer to home.
Carved relief soften echoes, transforming busy gyms into contemplative retreats. Be public baths in community. Centers co-working thermal hubs in Europe's wellness architecture renaissance. Projects combine, wet areas with communal lounges and workspaces. drawing on hammam's social model. Glass-paneled domes and curved benches foster informal gatherings beside plunge pools. Adaptive reuse, vacant industrial buildings, old mill halls and warehouses are reimagined as public baths. Architects retain brick hypercaustic crawl spaces, exposing them as design elements, while vaults and arches become communal reading nooks and lounges. See urban heat management, passive cooling and airflow. Hammam's convection systems inspire passive ventilation. Designs in hotter climates, stack effect towers that draw cool air through shaded courtyards and expel hot air overhead, reducing reliance on mechanical air conditioning. Material massing. Urban planners specify stone and masonry facades with high thermal inertia to moderate day-night temperature swings, channeling heat into upper vents and echo of marbles. Role in bathhouse climate control. Through these ancient hammam principles guide sustainable design solutions, marrying sensory delight with ecological responsibility. For teaching through space educational hammam models, some institutions have embraced hammam architecture as living laboratories. University research centers at Middle East technical institutes, scaled hammam models test thermal comfort. Researchers instrument microhypercausts and monitor temperature gradients, applying findings to modern building codes. Museum installations. Ethnographic museums reconstruct full-sized hammam chambers complete with domes and underfloor furnaces, offering visitors tactile experiences. These reconstructions educate about spatial psychology and traditional engineering. By integrating hammam study into architecture, history, and mechanical engineering curricula, these programs ensure that the craft and science of steamhouse design persists via the architecture of well-being, lasting principles reflecting on the Ottoman hammam's architectural evolution from quarries to from decorative inlays to mosaic psychology, and through cycles of decline and revival we surface core lessons, integration of function and aesthetic. In hammam, structural elements, arches, flues, relief carvings, always served dual roles, practical and poetic. Modern design gains depth when functional systems, HVAC, lighting, acoustics are celebrated as part of the aesthetic, rather than concealed. Ritualized transitions, the careful modulation of light, temperature, and space guided bathers through a sequence of states. Contemporary public buildings, libraries, parks, wellness centers can adopt graduated thresholds and sensory transitions to support mental and physical well-being. Craftsmanship in harmony with environment. Historic hammam to demonstrate how local materials and artisanal skills produce resilient, place-based architecture. Today's projects benefit from engaging local craftspeople and materials, fostering cultural continuity and reducing environmental impact. Scale of human experience. Vault heights, bench depths, and dome apertures were all calibrated to human scale, conveying grandeur without alienation. In our era of monumental architecture, remembering the comfort of human proportions built for touch, sound, and communal presence grounds design in empathy. Final reflection. Building restful worlds as you stand once more beneath a marble vault reel, or imagine feeling the faint warmth of stones still memory hot. Let this linger. The Ottoman hammam reminds us that architecture can be a vessel for transformation when every arch, aperture, and inlay harmonizes function, ritual, and sensory delight. In creating spaces for rest and renewal, what lessons from these steam-filled sanctuaries might you weave into the buildings and rooms of your own life, crafting everyday environments that heal as they shelter? Origins of Ottoman thermal mass. Wandered beneath marble arches, inhaled aromatic steam, and felt the calibrated warmth that breathes life into every Ottoman hammam. Now, let us dive into the very substance of that experience: water and heat. In this first section, we'll trace how Ottoman architects and physicians harnessed thermal science, drawing on ancient Greek theory, Byzantine engineering, and local, empirical observations to create water regimes that soothed muscles, purified skin, and balanced the body's humors. You'll discover how water sources were classified and managed, how temperature gradations were mapped onto health prescriptions, and how innovations in heating technology made every drop a tool of cure. The humoral framework. Medical foundations of thermal therapy. To understand why temperature mattered so deeply in the hammam, we must first step into the world of humoral medicine. For centuries, the dominant paradigm in Ottoman and wider Islamic medical schools traced its lineage to Galen of Pergamon and Hippocrates. They taught that the human body comprised four humors: blood, sanguis, phlegm, yellow, bile, and black, bilich with associated qualities of hot, cold, moist, or dry. Disease arose when these humors fell out of balance. Blood sanguine, hot and moist, was linked to vitality and cheerfulness, but, when excessive, could lead to fevers. Phlegm cold, and moist governed lethargy and congestion. An overabundance invited colds and respiratory complaints. Yellow bile, hot and dry, drove digestion and metabolism. Too much produced irritability and inflammatory conditions. Black bile, cold and dry, underlay melancholic states and digestive sluggishness. Ottoman physicians such as the 16th century Karafid and Sabanquoglu adapted these theories. prescribing thermal regimens to counteract humor imbalances. A patient prone to cold, moist, phlegmatic complaints would be guided into hotter chambers to dry and warm the body, while someone with febrile sanguine excess might spend shorter durations in milder heat or conclude with cooler plunges. In the frigidarium, this humoral calculus dictated not only which chambers to use, but for how long, and at what sequence. The hammam became a living laboratory where physicians, bathhouse attendants, and even patrons themselves tuned temperature to temperament. 2. Water sources and quality classification. Before water could be heated or cooled, it had to be not all water is created equal. Ottoman hammams relied on 3 principal water types, each carrying distinct chemical and sensory properties. Spring water and isu, drawn from natural springs, emerging along hillsides or beneath bathhouse complexes. Spring water was prized for purity and cooler baseline temperatures P-16 degrees Celsius. Its mineral composition, moderate calcium, magnesium, trace iron, lent it a smooth mouthfeel and was believed to aid circulation. Some hammams piped spring water directly into the frigidarium basins and the tepidarium's auxiliary pools, while water chaosu, dug beneath hammam precincts or nearby courtyards. Wells tapped the water table, slightly warmer P-20 degrees Celsius and subject to seasonal variation. Well water formed the majority supply for upper temperature basins and for mixing with heated water in transitional pools. Its mineral hardness required occasional lime softening, treatments aiding crushed marble filings to reduce scale on boilers and basins. Heated boiler, water skaksu, fresh water drawn from spring or well was pumped or bucketed into large Castian boilers heated by wood or charcoal fires. Once water reached target temperatures Y-60 degrees Celsius, it was piped via copper conduits into the tepidarium's underslab chambers and into direct feed taps for bathing. Metal fittings were often coated in tin to resist corrosion and maintain water purity. Ottoman engineers catalogued these sources meticulously, assigning water quality ranks. A 17th century treatise from Buza's medical school describes 5 grades based on clarity, coldness, and mineral taste, ensuring that each hammam matched its water profile to patrons' therapeutic needs. 3. Calibrating chambers, temperature, gradation, and health prescriptions. The hammam's brilliance lay in its graduated temperature zones. Unlike modern spas with thermometers and digital controls, Ottoman bathhouses employed empirical design and human oversight. Kamikan changing room, roughly ambient temperature Y-24 degrees Celsius. The kamikan served to remove outdoor chill, but did not actively heat the body. Subtle warmth from adjacent hypercaust channels kept the air comfortable, preventing rapid temperature swings upon entry. Tepidarium ilic salon, targeting body core temperature approximately 37 degrees Celsius. The tepidarium's under and wall flue systems maintained mild warmth. This chamber was essential for opening the pores according to humoral theory without stressing the cardiovascular system. Physicians recommended sojourns of 10 to 15 minutes for sedentary patrons before advancing hararet, atal, calderiyamez, salon with temperatures ranging Ik-48 degrees Celsius. The hararet provided active sweating and muscle relaxation. Elderly or weak bathers were advised to remain on lower benches closer to the floor. Robust guests ascended to higher tiers for intensified heat. Bathhouse stewards Tellaks monitored visible sweating, listening to patrons breathing to gauge overstressing. Typical exposure lasted 5 to 10 minutes, punctuated by cooling spritzes. Soğukluk frigidarium soğuk salon at P-18 degrees Celsius. Cold rooms offered plunges into cool basins or drenched showers. These abrupt drops stimulated circulation and sealed opened pores. Humoral prescriptions called for repeat cycles, hot-cold-hot, allowing contrast therapy to reinforce vascular tone. Without devices, tempo and stage transitions relied on human guidance. Tellaks carried copper bowls of water to sprinkle on clients, gauging readiness by the color and texture of sweat. Patrons watched one another, learning socially approved durations. In scaled court hammams, physicians kept hourglass timers for precision. In neighborhood baths, the cadence of prayer calls or lantern shifts signaled stage changes for heating innovations, hypercaust refinements, and boiler technology over centuries. Ottoman engineers refined heating systems to deliver consistent, controllable warmth, fuel, quality, and management. Early hammams burned wood. By the 17th century, imported charcoal denser and longer burning reduced smoke and soot accumulation. Charcoal stores were tightly regulated, with royal hammams receiving priority allotments measured in Kyle imperial volume units. Furnace boiler integration. Boilers set directly above furnace grates achieved higher efficiencies. Cast iron, introduced by European foundries in the late 18th century, replaced earlier lead-lined copper pans, offering greater durability and heat retention. Where safety demanded, blacksmiths crafted double-wall boilers with water jackets for controlled tempering. Temperature mixing valves. Artisans developed simple brass mixing valves, 2-inlet, one outlet fittings that blended hot boiler water with cooler well water, enabling on-demand temperature adjustments for hand washes or therapeutic foot baths. These valves, operated by wooden handles, required periodic disassembly to clear mineral deposits. Insulation and heat conservation. External walls adjacent to furnace rooms were lined with mud brick insulation layers, reducing heat loss. Floors beneath tepidarium slabs were meticulously grouted with lime sand mortar, minimizing air leakage and maximizing radiant transfer. These innovations demonstrate a craftsman-scientist ethos, mastery of local materials, fine-tuned combustion control, and responsive mixing systems, all aimed at stabilizing water temperatures across the hammam's complex thermal geography. Water conservation and circulation. Operating a large hammam demanded vast volumes of water, yet Ottoman masters introduced early conservation measures. Pools. In some complexes, water from the hararet's basins drained into settling cisterns, where particulates sank. After simple sand filtering, this water returned to boilers for reheating, cutting overall consumption by up to 30%. Gravity-fed flow. Elevated rooftop cisterns held morning sun-warmed water, gravity-feeding frigidarium taps without pumps. This passive system reduced reliance on manual buckets and expedited stage transitions. Seasonal scheduling. Peak bathing seasons, autumn and spring, saw supplemental water rationing. Hammams opened later in the day and closed earlier, allocating scarce water first to the tepidarium and frigidarium, then to hotter rooms if supply permitted. Legal registers from Bursa's market inspectors record fines levied on hammam owners who exceeded monthly water quotas, evidence that sustainable practices were not only encouraged but enforced. Unresolved thought. As you imagine the careful choreography of water sources, staged heat zones, mixing valves, and recirculating pools. Innovation born of humoral theory, empirical testing, and material mastery. Consider this question. In an era of abundant hot water at the twist of a tap but rising energy costs and environmental strains, what lessons from Ottoman thermal science might guide us toward more mindful, efficient, and health-centered bathing practices? Deepening the thermal regimen. Engineering advances in medicinal practices. Trace the origins of Ottoman thermal mastery from humoral theory and water sourcing to calibrated chambers and hypercost innovations. Now, let us delve deeper into how engineers refined bathhouse heating and how physicians integrated these advances into elaborate therapeutic protocols. You'll journey through specialized water treatments, discover the sophisticated plumbing that moved water across vast complexes, and learn how medical practitioners diagnosed ailments by assigning individualized thermal regimens. By the end, you'll understand not only how Ottoman bathhouses sustained ideal conditions of heat and hydration, but how those conditions were adapted for every body and every malady. Specialized water treatments, from mineral infusion to herbal bath. Basic hammams relied on pure spring or well water. Elite bathhouses introduced remedial infusions tailored to specific health needs. Mineral enrichment, salt, brine additions. Some coastal hammams piped saline solution drawn from nearby salt pans into warm pools to aid circulation and reduce joint inflammation. Tests by 17th century physicians showed that a 3 to 5% salt concentration eased rheumatic stiffness without stinging. Sulfur baths. Near spa towns like Bursa and Kese, hammams incorporated local sulfur springs. Sulfur-infused water, heated to tepidarium levels, was believed to counteract skin eruptions and respiratory congestion. Care was taken to vent excess hydrogen sulfide smells through separate flues, preserving the main steam chamber's ambience. Herbal and floral infusions. Rose petal steeps, fresh or dried petals bulked in large copper cauldrons, infused the tepidarium's steam with gentle astringent properties. Ottoman court physicians prescribed rose steam for women suffering menstrual cramps or mood imbalances, citing its cooling and clarifying effect on sanguine humors. Mint and sage. Boiling pots of mint or sage leaves near furnace vents released invigorating vapors into the hararet. Tellaks arranged these pots in niches so that as water heated, aromatic steam mingled with the main chamber's moisture, supporting respiratory comfort and easing digestive upset. Essential oil drip rings under the domed skylight. Small copper rings held absorbent cloths soaked in concentrated oils, lavender, bay, or chamomile. As steam condensed on the underside of the dome, it washed over these cloths and dripped infused droplets onto bathers below in a slow, time-release manner. These additives required precise dosing. Too much sulfur or herb could irritate skin or eyes. Master Tellaks and physician consultants monitored bathers' reactions, adjusting infusion strength from one session to the next. Two innovations in plumbing and water delivery. Creating and maintaining these water treatments demanded advanced plumbing systems far more complex than the simple copper conduits of basic hammams. Dual-pipe network separate circuits. Elite bathhouses featured twin pipe runs, one piping pure water for drinking and face washes, another carrying treated or heated water to various chambers. Color-coded brass valves marked by small ruby or emerald inlays helped Tellaks open the correct circuit for each chamber. branching manifolds in large complexes with multiple tepidaria and harets. Branching manifolds directed hot water. 2 priority areas. Pressure gauges, bronze tubes with calibrated float indicators let supervisors balance flow rates, ensuring each room reached and maintained target temperatures. Water recycling and filtration sedimentation basins. Before reuse, drained pool water passed through stepped basins where heavier particulates settled. Algae and scum skimmed off the surface were collected weekly and composted, then used as fertilizer in palace gardens. A primitive circular economy. Sand and charcoal filters in porches adjacent to furnace rooms. Multi-layer sand, then charcoal polished water clarity and removed odors. Charcoal, imported from select forests, had activated properties valued for its mild absorption of impurities. Pump systems and pressure regulation. Manual piston pumps to refill rooftop cisterns and boost well water to boilers. Bathhouses employed piston pumps powered by teams of attendants. Each stroke delivered roughly 2 liters, allowing rapid refilling between peak bathing hours. Air-charged pressure vessels. Some 18th century hammams experimented with early pressure vessels, sealed iron containers precharged with air, which smoothed out surges in hot water flow, mimicking modern expansion tanks. These vessels, though maintenance intensive, reduced temperature fluctuation during busy periods. The result of these plumbing innovations was unparalleled consistency. Bathers could trust each tepidarium pool to hover within half a degree of ideal, and each hararet bench to radiate even heat, luxuries unknown in many European spas of the same era. 3. Medical diagnostics and personalized thermal prescriptions. Bathhouses employed resident physicians or visiting medical consultants, who tailored thermal regimens to individual health profiles. Admission assessments, pulse and pallor upon arrival. Physicians took patients' pulses, measuring rate and tension over 30 seconds, and recorded skin, complexion and natural light by the Kamikans' windows. A slow, weak pulse plus pale skin suggested phlegmatic excess, warranting longer soaks in hotter rooms. Abounding rapid pulse and flushed skin indicated sanguine surplus, calling for abbreviated exposure and prompt transition to cool basins. Symptom surveys. Bathers described digestive issues, joint pains or insomnia. Physicians correlated these complaints with humoral imbalances, assigning temperature, humidity, and duration parameters based on canonical texts and local clinical experience. Regimen formulation. Thermal sequencing. Standard protocols might prescribe 15 minutes in tepidarium, 5 minutes on lower bench of hararet, 3 minutes on upper bench. Do a minute Kese scrub, oil massage, 1 minute cold plunge, resting cooling alcove. Slight modifications for arthritis patients. The hot phase could extend to 10 minutes. For migraine sufferers, herbal infused steam took precedence over sheer heat. Frequency and duration. Chronic conditions, skin disorders, gout, or neuromuscular complaints merited repeat visits. 3 sessions per week over 6 weeks, followed by maintenance soaks monthly. Agar-prone travelers might add brief daily tepidarium visits for circulatory stability. Monitoring and adaptation. Clinical logs. Bathhouse ledgers recorded each therapeutic visit, noting water temperature readings taken by floating glass bulbs, marked in degrees, session lengths, and patient feedback. Over decades, this corpus of anonymized case histories informed refinements in regimen design. Adverse event protocols, rare complications, heat exhaustion, fainting or steam inhalation. Distress triggered immediate cooling in frigidarium walkways and administration of cool rosewater sprays. Physicians oversaw recovery. Areas benches nestled in the cooling corridor. Ventilated airflow and whispering attendants ensured safe convalescence by intertwining diagnostic rigor with empirical observation. Ottoman bathhouse medicine. I achieved a level of personalization and agility unmatched by many contemporary European baths, where one-size-fits-all scalding tubs were still the norm for social dimensions of thermal care. Thermal regimens extended beyond solitary therapy into communal bonds and cultural exchange. Group treatments and solidarity. Guild-sponsored visits. Artisans' guilds and military units booked collective hammam sessions before major festivals or campaigns. Shared thermal experiences fostered camaraderie, allowed public discussion of grievances in a semi-private setting, and reinforced group identities. Patron-physician dialogues. High-ranking patrons often consulted physicians and tellaks in room. Small side chambers, branching off main halls where discussions of health, politics, and theology unfolded amid dappled light. Knowledge transmission. Apprenticeship of tellaks, young scrub masters trained under senior masters not only in keys technique, but also in thermal reading, learning to discern subtle differences in water quality, steam density, and floorboard heat. This practical education dovetailed with lessons in courtesy, modesty, and safe handling of fragile patrons. Medical manuscripts in bathhouse libraries. Some larger complexes housed small libraries of medical texts, Galen's treatises, Ibn Sina's canon, locale compendia available to physicians and curious bathers. Marginalia in these manuscripts often recorded local observations, seeding future innovations. Unresolved pointers. You digest the sophistication of Ottoman thermal science, its water treatments, plumbing marvels, personalized regimens, and social integration. Consider this. In an age when we take precise thermostats and chemistry-grade spa additives for granted, what insights can we draw from the Ottomans' holistic melding of empirical engineering, medical theory, and communal knowledge to reimagine our own thermal wellness practices? From steam to sustainability, the evolution and enduring lessons of Ottoman thermal science. I have traced the humoral roots of Ottoman bathing, followed water sources and chamber calibrations, and delved into engineered advances that delivered personalized cures. Now we'll chart how Ottoman thermal mastery weathered the upheavals of modernization, fell into decline and rediscovery, and ultimately seeded contemporary approaches to sustainable wellness. As you drift toward the final lines of this narrative, consider how lessons from hypercosts and herbal infusions can inform our own quest for health, community, and ecological balance. Modernization and marginalization of traditional thermal regimens. Technological disruption in the 19th and early 20th centuries. As the Ottoman Empire confronted European industrial power, new heating and water systems arrived, centralized boilers and radiators, steam boilers powered not by charcoal but by coal-fired furnaces and later by oil and electricity. Radiator networks spread warmth through walls and floors, offering control but severing the intimate link between fire, stone, and water. Indoor plumbing and private baths, Western-style flush toilets, and bathtubs entered urban homes. Families no longer needed communal hammams for basic hygiene. They sought public baths only for social ritual or specialty treatments. Medical paradigm shift, germ theory and modern physiology displaced humoral medicine. Thermal treatments remained valued for musculoskeletal relief, but their theoretical underpinning shifted from balancing humors to improving circulation and promoting endorphin release. These changes relegated traditional thermal regimens to niche practice. Some hammams, once civic health centers, became luxury retreats, while countless neighborhood baths closed, their hypercosts silenced and skylights sealed. Decline and threat of loss throughout the 20th century. The combined effects of war, urban redevelopment, and changing tastes imperiled hammams. Structural decay, unmaintained hypercost channels collapsed, vaults cracked under neglect, marble slabs cracked and shifted. Many smaller hammams were demolished to make way for apartment blocks or parking lots. Loss of craft knowledge. As marble carvers retired without successors, intricate relief work and mosaic restoration skills faded. Plumbing repairs became leading to leaks and mineral buildup that further damaged historic fabric. Regulatory gaps. Early heritage laws focused on monumental mosques and palaces, overlooking bathhouses. Rights of way for water supply were rescinded or sold, severing hammams from their natural springs. By the latter decades of the 20th century, UNESCO and national cultural agencies recognized that without swift action, dozens of centuries-old hammams would vanish entirely. 2. Heritage revival and adaptive reuse. Conservation movements and international support. The 1980s and 90s saw a renaissance of interest. Survey and documentation. Architectural historians and archaeologists catalogued surviving hammams, measured plans, recorded decoration, and analyzed hypercost remains. These records formed the backbone of restoration strategies. Restoration projects. Flagship restorations such as the Haseki Harem Sultan Hammam restored 1950s-60s and the Galatasaray Hammam 1997-2002 demonstrated how meticulous research and skilled craft could return bathhouses to functional life. Restoration teams revived hypercosts, repaired marble vaults with compatible lime mortar, and recreated mosaic panels using traditional techniques. Community engagement. Local stakeholders, residents, small business owners, and heritage involved in planning, ensuring that restored hammams served public needs rather than becoming exclusive tourist enclaves. International bodies, including UNESCO and ICOMOS, provided funding and technical guidance, emphasizing minimal intervention, reversibility of modern additions, and authenticity of materials. Adaptive reuse. Models recognizing that pure restoration sometimes threatened financial viability. Stakeholders embraced adaptive reuse, wellness, and spa hybrids. Restored hammams now offer modern spa services, aromatherapy, facials, yoga and adjacent annexes, cross-subsidizing traditional steam rituals. Care is taken to isolate new structures so as not to detract from historic spaces. Cultural centers and cafes. Some hammams host small museums or community cafes in former changing rooms, using interpretive displays to educate visitors about thermal science and humoral medicine. These spaces encourage daytime foot traffic and build ongoing public investment in maintenance. Boutique hotels. A handful of grand hammams have been integrated into luxury hotels, offering guests an immersive, historic experience. Critics caution that privatization risks excluding local residents. Successful models prioritize mixed-use access and community pricing. These varied approaches sustain hammams economically while preserving their core thermal and spatial integrity. 3. Reimagining thermal science for sustainability. The environmental and energy challenges of the 21st century prompt fresh reflection on Ottoman thermal engineering. A. Passive heating and renewable fuel integration of piston-inspired underfloor systems. Modern buildings in temperate climates are experimenting with radiant floors powered by solar geothermal heat pumps. These systems echo hypocaust principles, distributing warmth through the floor's thermal mass for even steady comfort. Biomass and wood gasification. Small-scale spa facilities in rural areas are adopting clean-burning biomass boilers, using sustainably harvested wood or agricultural bio. These boilers can heat water and underfloor circuits, minimizing fossil fuel use and reducing carbon footprint. B. Water conservation and circular economy. Greywater recirculation. Today's spas implement multi-stage filtration, sand, charcoal, UV sterilization to recycle bathwater for heating pre-filled tanks or irrigation systems. This parallels Ottoman sedimentation basins and charcoal filters, demonstrating enduring relevance. Rainwater harvesting. Rooftop cisterns, integrated into hammam reconstructions, collect rainwater for non-potable uses. Landscape irrigation, toilet, flushing, or decorative cascades, reducing demand on mains water and honoring traditional reliance on local sources. See holistic wellness and community. Space. Socially inclusive design. Community bathhouses in European cities are modeling the Ottoman ethos of equal access, sliding scale fees, gender-neutral hours, and integrated social services. Nutrition counseling. Elder care meets around steam rituals, thermal diversity rather than standardized saunas or hammams. Some centers offer multimodal thermal journeys, cold plunge, pools, herbal steam showers, infrared chambers, each mapped to specific health outcomes, reflecting the Ottoman practice of personalized regimens. Through these innovations, thermal science evolves again, combining ancient wisdom with modern technology to serve both people and planet. 4. Enduring principles. Crafting future thermal rituals. Reflecting on 600 years of Ottoman bathhouse, 4 core principles emerge that can guide tomorrow's wellness and public architecture. Integration of structure and therapy. Heating, water flow, acoustics and ornament all serve a unified therapeutic aim. Modern design can break silos between mechanical engineers, architects, and health professionals, crafting spaces where form and function heal in concert. Ritualize transitions as well-being tools. The clear progression. Changing room, warm room, hot room, scrub, massage, cold plunge shapes both body and mind. Contemporary spas might better harness ritualized pacing rather than offering buffet-style amenities. Local materiality and skilled craft. Ottoman hammams embodied place marble from Marmara, timbers from Thrace, local mineral springs. Resilient design today returns to local resources and invests in artisans, fostering circular economies and cultural continuity. Community-centered access. Hammams thrived as egalitarian spaces. Future wellness centers can balance commercial operations with community programs. Affordable hours. Health outreach. Cultural education, ensuring thermal science remains a public good, not a luxury. V. Final reflection. As you imagine the quiet glow of restored marble vaults and imagine stepping onto a gently heated slab once more. Consider this. The Ottoman mastery of thermal science reminds us that truly restorative environments weave together material innovation, cultural ritual, and communal care in designing our own spaces for health and healing. How might we honor these intertwined legacies, building not just facilities, but frameworks for sustainable well-being that nurtured both individuals and communities? From garden to gizlim, the botanical roots of hammam aromas. Tonight, we hail the subtle alchemy that turned dry steam into scented sanctuary. Ottoman bathhouses did more than cleanse bodies in their vaulted chambers. Master bathers infused steam with healing botanicals, rose petals, mint sprigs, and resinous resins drawn from imperial gardens and frontier fields. In this first section, you'll trace how Islamic physicians and Ottoman horticulturists cultivated, classified, and prepared these aromatic agents, how bathhouse kitchens transformed fragrant harvests into medicinal steams, and how sensory before modern aromatherapy recognized scent's power to calm the mind, uplift the spirit, and even prime the body for thermal healing. Islamic botany and the birth of Ottoman aromatics. Long before the Ottomans built domed hammams, medieval Islamic scholars systematized botanical knowledge. In the 9th-12th centuries, key figures Al-Razi catalogued rose and mint extracts in his Kitzbah wa, noting their cooling and calming effects. Ibn al-Bayta traversed Mediterranean trade routes around 1200 CE, compiling a compendium of over 1,400 plants, many later grown in Ottoman palace gardens, gardens of the sultans from Edirne to Istanbul. Palace horticeche as top copies. Imperial gardens stocked formal beds of Gulra damask rose, Nain spearmint, and Levanta lavender alongside vegetable herbs, supporting both cuisine and steam therapy. These gardens were living pharmacies. Botanical treatises guided seasonal harvesting. Roses pick at daybreak when oil content peaked. Lavender cut at full bloom to preserve alul, mint cut just before flowering for optimal menthol. Such precision ensured consistent aromatic potency, classification of aromatics, temperatures and humors just as physicians classified water and heat. They matched scents to humoral profiles. Cooling botanicals rose hot moist in small doses. Cooling when oversteeped soothed sanguine excess, easing headaches and heart palpitations. Mint hot dry stimulated alertness, clearing phlegmatic sluggishness and nasal congestion. Warming resins and woods, frankincense, hot dry supported waning, vitality, aiding those with cold black bile humors fraught with melancholy. Cedar shavings or sandalwood chips, although expensive, lent gentle, long-lasting warmth and grounded mood for northerners visiting coastal hammams. Balancing blends, mixed baths rose with a hint of bergamot, pellified harmonizing effects, countering irritability while gently invigorating. Physicians recommended adjusting infusion strength, 5 rose petals per bather in tepid steam, doubling for mild hararet use, but avoiding overconcentration that could overwhelm or irritate sensitive skin. 3. Bathhouse kitchens, from herb baskets to steam cauldrons behind the scenes. Hammam kitchens and apothecaries orchestrated aromatic steams with culinary precision. Herb preparation, fresh flowers and leaves arrived daily, harvested at dawn and stored in cool shaded stone cellars. Wilted or bruised material was discarded to prevent off-odors. Steep and simmer. Copper cauldrons, separate from boiling pans, held measured herbs and water, gently simmered over low fires for 15 to 20 minutes. Artemisia branches or rose hips, sometimes accompanied primary herbs, enriching complexity. Infusion delivery, warm, herb-laden water or liquid distillates flowed into shallow trays set within hararet vents. As hot air rose through these trays, it carried aromatic volatiles into the chamber. In some affluent hammams, small clay pipes channeled direct steam from the infusion cauldron into niches near the dome, creating concentrated scent pockets. Oil distillation, for potent oils, apothecaries distilled rose or lavender under copper distillation alembic. The resulting essential oils were diluted in base oils for massage or dabbed onto linen sachets hung near the dome's oculus, where rising steam warmed and dispersed them slowly. These tasks, garden harvest, kitchen infusion, followed precise recipes handed down in harem kitchens or scribal manuals, blending empirical observation with inherited lore. 4. Sensory science, mood, memory, and mind olfactory effects in the hammam tapped into deep neural pathways. Stress reduction. Modern studies show rose and lavender lower cortisol. Ottoman bathers reported similar calming sensations, attributing mental ease to lightness of the heart. Hawkeye calb respiratory support. Menthol from mint loosens phlegm. Tellers note that women with seasonal cough found relief in mint steam. Memory and emotion sense tied to personal and social memories. The rose steam of one's wedding bath evoked nostalgia. The cedar scent of a grandpa's hammam imparted comfort. This communal embedding of scent reinforced the hammam's role as a social anchor. Some bathhouses even maintained scent profiles according to day of week. Mondays carried cooling lavender, Wednesdays gentle rose, Fridays warming cedar. Too subtly guide emotional ebbs and flows through communal ritual. Unresolved thought as you imagine bouquets of Ottoman rose petals steeping in copper cauldrons, mint sprigs sizzling in simmering water, and the dome above scattering scented steam like cosmic perfume. Reflect on this. How might our modern spas re-embrace botanical precision, cultivating, classifying, and calibrating aromatic infusions to restore the lost art of scent-centered healing in an age of synthetic fragrances, crafting the invisible mechanics ritual, and the multisensory cocktail. Now that you've inhaled the botanical origins of hammam aromatics, rose petals, mint sprigs, fragrant resins, let's move behind the scenes and into the heart of how scent was woven into every stage of the Ottoman bath-going ritual. In this section, you'll explore the elaborate choreography between chef-like infusion masters, Tellaks trained in olfactory moderation, and the bathhouse architecture itself, all working together to deliver not just steam, but a carefully balanced multi-sensory cocktail. We'll examine the timing and delivery of aromatic steam, the interplay between scent and sequence, the role of smell in social and spiritual dimensions, and how these invisible alchemies were monitored, adjusted, and passed down across generations of bathhouse craftsmen. The alchemy of infusion timing. A hammam's aromatic display was never a static presence. Instead, fragrances emerged, waned, and transformed in concert with the thermal regimen. Timing measured by hourglass, call to prayer, or the Tellaks practiced. I dictated when and how infusions were introduced. A pre-opening preparations, dawn inventory and quality checks, herb and flower inspection before the first patrons arrived. Infusion masters, often former apothecaries, conducted a meticulous inventory of perishable materials. Rose petals were examined for color uniformity and absence of dark spots. Mint leaves tested for oil content by gentle crushing. Resin chunks scraped of dust. Any sign of fading or mold disqualified an entire batch, ensuring only the freshest aromas entered the steam. Drying and storage. Rotation in hammams with high foot traffic like imperial or palace. Bathhouses reserve stock of dried petals and herbs rotated weekly in ventilated cabinets set within the kamik. This storage retained potency while preventing damp-induced spoilage infusion. Station setup, copper cauldron placement, large copper infusion. Cauldrons capacity 50 to 100 liters were positioned on low, side alcove hearths designed to burn low and steady. These alcoves were located just outside the hararet, with small viewing ports allowing Tellaks to monitor bubbling without opening doors. Water, preheat. Well water pre-warmed by circulation through underfloor flues was drawn first, accelerating infusion and reducing fuel consumption. The water's temperature tracked with floating glass thermometers marked in Ottoman hot targeted Y-55 degrees Celsius, optimal for releasing volatile oils without denaturing delicate compounds. B. Synchronized. Real-based infusion points. Transition. As the first wave of bathers moved from the kamikin into the tepidarium, a gentle rose petal infusion began. Tellak stirred the cauldron with long copper paddles, then ladled handfuls of petals into narrow mesh baskets set in the tepidarium's floor vents. Over the next 10 to 12 minutes, pale pink steam diffused, signaling the room's warming phase, and priming senses for deeper heat. Peak hararet aromas when the tepidarium's minute glass expired. Guests advanced to the hararet's lower bench. There a second infusion mint and sage was released. Tellaks lowered the mesh baskets into hotter vent channels, where steam hissed through leaves, releasing sharper notes that invigorated and opened airways, counterbalancing the oppressive warmth, culminating resin release. After the keys, scrub and oil massage, as patrons relaxed on heated marble, the final infusion commenced. A slow-burning resin such as frankincense. Small bundles of resin chips were set ablaze in shallow brass pans at hararet corners, their aromatic smoke thicker and slower rising etched, a lingering finish. Anchoring the bath in contemplative calm, dynamic intensity contravalve-operated flows, copper valves along infusion conduits allowed Tellaks to modulate steam volume. A quarter turn opened a narrow jet, full opening released a torrent of vapor. By watching how quickly scent permeated the domed vault, Tellaks judged whether to throttle back or intensify flow. Patron feedback loops. In palace or medical hammam, physicians sampled air with light linen squares held at chest height, then tested their scent with quick inhales. Their nod or shake signaled adjustments. In more communal settings, Tellaks gauged patrons' reactions, heads tilting, eyelids fluttering, or murmurs of pleasure to fine-tune timing. II. Spatial strategy, directing scent through architecture. The hammam's architecture was integral to our factory design. Thoughtful placement of vents, niches, and conduits ensured that scents traveled along intended paths, enveloping bathers precisely when and where. DESIREDA zoning aroma, intensity venting hierarchy, high ceilings, weak flow, near the dome, apex where steam and heat accumulated. Small perforations allowed only minimal fragrance escape, preserving starlit light cues. Mid-wall niches, long bench height walls, larger vents delivered full-strength aromatic steam directly to seated patrons. These niches had interior mesh screens to hold herbs in place. Floor channels at floor level, gentle scented steam rose to greet those first entering each chamber, creating an olfactory welcome. Directional air paths, curved flue layouts. Flues under the floor were shaped not as straight runs but in gentle S-curves or spirals, slowing airflow and giving aromatic steam more contact time with herbs, maximizing extraction. Ceiling baffles, small marble baffles, flat panels angled toward niches deflected scented air away from structural walls and toward seating areas, preventing scents from being lost too quickly or overwhelming corners. B. Sensory transition. Corridors. Some hammams incorporated narrow corridors between chambers, a design choice serving dual sensory purposes. Scent gradients. As bathers passed, residual steam and aromas in cooler corridors lingered faintly, offering a momentary interlude of olfactory calm before the next infusion wave. Acoustic and thermal buffering. These corridors, often lit by a single lantern and outfitted with rough textured stone, absorbed excess chatter and humidity, priming senses for the forthcoming scented surge. 3. Tellak and Natır, guardians of the olfactory experience behind every perfect aromatic fusion, stood the bathhouse attendants, Tellak for men and Natır for women, whose training combined physical technique with sensory stewardship, apprenticeship, and scent literacy. Early training. Young apprentices began by learning to identify 20 to 30 core aromatic materials by sight, touch, and smell, distinguishing between rose varieties, mint, cultivars, and resin grades. They practiced blending small batches under the supervision of a master, learning ratio rules, for example, 1 part lavender to 4 parts rose for balancing purposes and assessing condensation patterns to infer double boil or single boil strengths. Advanced certification senior Tellaks underwent examinations in parade-like settings before masters and physicians. They demonstrated precise timing at Ingro's infusion exactly 17 minutes. Into tepidarium heat and executed sudden valve throttles to clear excess resin smoke. Passing this exam granted the right to serve in imperial or medical hammams. Sent monitoring visual cues. Tellaks watched for whipped steamed clouds, whiter, denser wisps that indicated aromatic saturation. If too many vapors pooled near the dome holes, they eased infusion rates to prevent odor burnout. Tactile feedback. By briefly placing a fingertip near but not within vent inlets, Tellaks gauged temperature and moisture content, inferring herb solubility in oil dispersion and steam. Patron signals. Subtle gestures, a raised hand, a sneeze, or a sniffle eroded attendance to potential overexposure. Tellaks were trained to recognize whether a sneeze stemmed from a tickle or from too high mint concentration, demanding immediate valve throttling for olfaction and community. Rituals beyond the steam chamber scent in the hammam extended into social and spiritual realms, shaping customs long after bathers departed the scenarium. A post-bath fragrance linger in gestimal perfuming after sessions. Patrons wrapped themselves in pestimals lightly misted with rosewater. These scented towels, folded discreetly over the arm, released gentle notes throughout the courtyard and changing rooms, extending the olfactory journey into daily life. Personal oil vials. Elite visitors carried small copper vials of concentrated essential oils, orange blossom, applying them at home as fragrant reminders of the hammam's calm home. Ritual extensions. Physicians often prescribe patients to continue daily inhalations of rose steam at home, boiling petals and brass. POT therapy with private maintenance. Be spiritual and communal dimensions in sense and devotion. In palace hammams attached to mosques, ceremonial incense and frankincense burned in suspended censers. The rising smoke symbolized prayers ascending, linking physical purification to spiritual cleansing. Scent and storytelling. Bathhouse corners sometimes hosted poetry recitals or council sessions, where scent-soaked air underscored moral lessons, or gossip confessions. The combination of warmth, moisture, and aroma made the hammam a potent site for emotional release and communal solidarity. Unresolved. Point as you envision Master Tellaks calibrating petal releases, infusion masters juggling, cauldrons of simmering herbs, and patrons draped in rose-mist perfumed towels. Consider this question. In a world saturated with synthetic scent marketing and one-size-fits-all fragrance blends, how might we revive the Ottoman art of botanical precision, training scent stewards, timing infusions, and integrating aroma into social ritual to craft truly personalized, communal and healing olfactory experiences? Echoes of scent decline, rediscovery, and the future of olfactory healing. You've inhaled the botanical lineage of Ottoman aromas, witnessed the orchestration of petals and resins through copper cauldrons and carved marble vents, and met the Tellaks whose scent literacy shaped every steamy moment. Now, in this final section, we trace how hammam scent traditions weathered social and technological change, survived near oblivion, and today inspire new directions in restorative practice. From 19th century declines through 21st century revivals, to emerging scent science frontiers, we explore the enduring power of aroma to heal body and bind community. Fading fragrances. The decline of botanical baths, westernization and domesticization. The late Ottoman period. Changing tastes and technologies began to erode the elaborate aromatic rituals. Private bathtubs and commercial soaps. As indoor plumbing and factory soaps proliferated, households adopted standardized fragranced bars, lavender, rose, musk, oriental spice rather than fresh petals and handmade oils. Consumers traded botanical nuance for convenience and shelf life. Perfume industry rise. Ottoman merchants pivoted to distilling stronger alcohol-based perfumes for export. While these eau de colognes preserved certain essences, their high bases clashed with the gentle steam dynamics of the hammam, shifting fragrance culture away from aqueous diffusion. Hammam relegation. Neighborhood bathhouses, strapped for water and fuel, prioritized basic next-day cleaning over daily floral infusions. Petals and herbs, once central to the ritual, became occasional luxuries reserved for special occasions, wedding, soaks, or festival treatments rather than daily practice. Architectural and economic pressures, increasing land values and maintenance costs also undercut scent infrastructure. Loss of kitchen space. Urban infill consumed the sidle cove kitchens that housed infusion cauldrons. In cramped quarters, hammams repurposed former herbal stores for offices or storage, scattering or discarding botanical stocks. Dwindling expertise. As perfumery schools modernized curricula toward distillation and solvent extraction. Traditional infusion knowledge harvesting times. Infusion ratios. Scent staging languished, with few apprentices to carry the torch. By the mid-20th century, most operational hammams offered plain steam and soap, their scent chambers silent. Their botanical palettes faded to soaps and basics. Rediscovery and revival. Renewed appreciation for scented steam. Heritage awakening in the 1980s and 90s. Cultural preservationists and wellness pioneers sparked renewed interest. Ethnobotanical research, academics unearthed Ottoman bathhouse, manuscripts 19th century recipe codices, palace garden inventories revealing precise infusion formulas. Botanical gardens in Istanbul began cultivating heirloom rose, mint, and lavender varieties once thought lost. Craft kitchens reinstalled. Select restored hammams such as the Hagia Sophia Harem Sultan Hammam, rebuilt side kitchens and reintroduced. Copper infusion cauldrons, carefully choreographed floral steam ceremonies returned as signature offerings, complete with Tellak scent journeys. Local sourcing movements, organizations linked farmers in Thrace, the Aegean Islands, and the southern coast directly to hammam cooperatives, encouraging organic cultivation of high-quality this revived traditional economies and re-established supply chains for petals and herbs. B. Contemporary olfactory rituals. Modern bathhouses now reinterpret Ottoman scent art for new audiences. Scented steam ceremonies. Signature experiences. Rose, rain, mint, breeze, sandalwood, sunset. Guide small groups through multi-stage thermal and olfactory sequences. Infusion masters time each petal release to music or guided meditation, linking aroma to narrative themes of love, renewal, or grounding. Custom scent profiles. Patrons complete pre-visit questionnaires about mood, health concerns, and fragrance preferences. Tellaks and aromatherapists then blend bespoke infusions, for example, chamomile and lavender for sleep support, rosemary and basil for cognitive clarity, deploying them at precise thermal stages. Educational workshops. Some hammams host petal to steam classes, teaching guests how to harvest, dry, and infuse botanicals, echoing Ottoman apothecary bathhouse synergy. Participants leave with handmade sachets and recipes, fostering personal scent rituals at home. These revivals demonstrate that Ottoman olfactory protocols, far from antiquated curiosities, resonate powerfully when reframed for mindful sensory-rich wellness. 3. Scent science today, bridging tradition and research. A. Neural olfactory insights. Contemporary science illuminates why Ottoman intuitions about scent held such potency. Limbic system engagement. Aromatic molecules directly stimulate the olfactory bulb, which in turn connects to the amygdala and hippocampus centers of emotion and memory. Rose and lavender have been shown to modulate stress response, reducing cortisol and enhancing alpha brain waves associated with relaxation. Respiratory therapies. Menthol-rich mint infusions aid bronchodilation, easing airflow and steam inhalation. Context. Precisely the effect Ottoman bathers reported for phlegmatic cough relief. Controlled studies validate these anecdotal traditions, encouraging clinicians to integrate steam-based aromatherapy into respiratory rehabilitation protocols. B. Sustainable sourcing and climate resilience. As global climate shifts threaten traditional herb-growing regions, new adaptations arise. Cultivar development. Agricultural researchers crossbreed heat-tolerant rose and mint strains that maintain high essential oil content under warmer, drier conditions, securing future supplies. Urban hammock gardens. Some hammams experiment with rooftop or courtyard herb gardens, leveraging free space to cultivate fresh botanicals on site, closing loops between growing, infusion, and aromatic dispersion. Circular biomass use. Spent petals and used herb matter, once discarded, now feed composting systems that nourish garden plots, embodying the Ottoman ethos of recycling bathhouse byproducts back into the earth. These approaches ensure that the botanical heart of scent steam rituals endures, even as environmental forces evolve. For beyond the bath, expanding olfactory rituals, the principles of Ottoman scented steam inspire broader applications. A. Therapeutic spaces in healthcare. Hospitals and clinics now pilot scent rooms where controlled aromatic steam sessions complement physical therapy, mirroring the hammam's integration of heat, moisture, and scent to promote holistic recovery. B. Workplace well-being. Offices install small steam infusion pods, microhammams, where employees can take brief aromatic breaks. Lavender to decompress, peppermint to refocus communal Ottoman rituals into modern corporate wellness. C. Cultural and artistic installations. Artists and designers draw on hammam olfactory heritage to craft immersive exhibits. Walk through steam domes with timed petal infusions. Multi-performances blending scent, sound, and narrative, paying homage to the sensory dramaturgy of historic bathhouses. Final reflection. As you imagine petals simmering in copper cauldrons, steam woven with mint's brisk lift and rose's tender hush, ponder this enduring question. In a world awash with synthetic scent cues and fleeting digital distractions, how might we reclaim the Ottoman art of botanical precision, tuning our environments not just to mask odors, but to shape mood, memory, and community through deliberate, multisensory rituals of steam and smell? Alchemical cleansing. Origins of Ottoman soap and the keys. Michuf, bathed in scented steam and felt marble warmth cradle your body. But the heart of the hammam's transformative power lies in its cleansing alchemy, the artful removal of the old to make way for the new. In this section, we explore how ordinary water and heat were transmuted through lye and fat, plant ashes and animal grease into the universally cherished Ottoman soap, and how the humble Kese myth became an instrument of ritual renewal. You'll trace soap's journey from Mediterranean kitchens to bathhouse niches, learn how Tellaks fashioned and maintained these cleansing elixirs, and uncover the social and medical contexts that elevated exfoliation from mere hygiene to a vital rite of purification. From kitchen cauldrons to bathhouse shelves, the birth of Ottoman soap, early Mediterranean soap-making traditions, Phoenician and Arabic roots. Soap production in the Eastern Mediterranean dates back centuries before the Ottoman. Phoenician soap made from wood, ash, and goat fats traveled in amphorae throughout the Levant. In early Islamic centers like Damascus and Aleppo, artisans refined recipes in the 8th-10th centuries by adding olive oil and aromatic herbs. These soaps, known as sabon, formed the basis for Ottoman bathhouse supplies. Regional variations. Aleppo soap blended laurelberry oil with olive oil and lye ash, producing a firm, aromatic bar reputed for its antiseptic qualities favored in palatial hammams. Marseille soap, imported in small quantities from French ports, sometimes supplemented local stocks, prized for its hardness but considered inferior in fragrance to Ottoman versions. Ottoman innovations and standardization. Imperial workshops by the 16th century. Imperial soap gardens sabun Hain operated in Istanbul, Idorn and Bursa. These state-run facilities enforced quality standards, olive oil sourced from Aegean groves, wood ash derived from walnut or oak to optimize lye purity, aromatic herbs rosemary chamomile, rose petals infused during saponification. Saponification process. Ash extraction. Artisans leached hardwood ash in copper cauldrons with boiling water, filtering out solids to yield a clear lye solution. pH, subless oil mixing, olive oil, animal tallow, and, in winter months, sheep suet were heated to Y-60 degrees Celsius. Lye addition. The lye solution was gradually whisked into the heated fats, stirring continuously until the mixture reached trace, when it thickened like pudding, indicating initial saponification. Aromatics and molding. Fresh herbs, essential oils, or spice powders were folded in. The soap was then poured into wooden molds carved with Ottoman tugra, imperial cipher, or mosque silhouettes, curing loaves cured for 3 to 6 months in ventilated stores, allowing excess water to evaporate and bars to harden. Soap varieties and medical endorsements. Fekulgine soaps. Coarser bars included volcanic pumice or fine sand for added abrading power, ideal for Tellaks keys, scrubs, medicinal infusions. Some soaps incorporated antiseptic herbs, tea tree introduced from later trade and were prescribed by physicians, like Carafidin sabanquaglu for mild eczema or tinea. Fragrant luxury soaps for royal bathers. Rose oil soaps. Gay El Sabunu offered both cleansing and olfactory pleasure. These were sometimes gilded with gold leaf flecks as a mark of prestige. 2. The Kese myth, weaving renewal through exfoliation. Origins and materiality. Primitive beginnings. Early exfoliation tools were simple linen cloths or loose weave sacks. Over time, bathhouse artisans wove specialized mitskis from coarse goat hair, hemp, or nylon threads introduced in the 20th century. Traditional mitts measured roughly 20-25 centimeters, with reinforced seams and looped handles for secure grip. Variations by region. In warmer Aegean hammams, mitts favored goat hair blends for gentler abrasion suitable for sensitive skin. In Anatolian bathhouses serving laborers, coarser hemp mitts provided deeper exfoliation to remove heavier grime and calluses. Crafting the mitt. Local weaving guilds. Kese production fell under cap makers or weaver guilds. Artisans combed goat hair, carded it into roving, then wove it into 2-layer mitts, creating a soft inner lining and a rough outer surface. Durability treatments. After weaving, mitts were boiled in diluted lye solution to harden fibers and resist mold similar to felt making, ensuring they retained exfoliating texture for up to 6 months of heavy use. Sanitization protocols. Daily rinse cycles in boiling water and weekly lye soakings disinfected mitts. Guild regulations mandated retiring mitts after a year to prevent bacterial buildup. Ritual mechanics of exfoliation. Tellak technique. Pre-soaked bathers warmed on the gugak tasi. Tellaks doused them in warm water to open pores. Sectional scrub. The body divided into quadrants: right arm to shoulder, left arm, right leg, left leg, each scrubbed in long, firm strokes. MIT angle approximately 30 and pressure calibrated to bather's skin type. Circular motion for joints. At elbows, knees, and ankles, Tellaks used small circles to loosen dead skin around creases. Final rinse. After each section, warm water poured to flush the way exfoliated cells, revealing pink, re-energized skin. Exfoliation as social performance. Bathers, especially women, often shared the Kese stage, taking turns receiving scrubs and assisting one another, fostering intimacy and mutual care. 3. Soap and Kese in medical and social context. Medical prescriptions and bathhouse medicine. Physicians integrated soap and mitt use into broader thermal regimens, psoriasis and eczema, advised lighter scrubs with mild olive oil soap, followed by rose petals, steam and healing clay masks. Arthritis encouraged vigorous mitt work on lower limbs to stimulate circulation, paired with sulfur-infused hot water soaks. Postnatal care. New mothers received gentle exfoliation to promote lymphatic drainage, followed by cooling baths to restore humor balance. Social dimensions of scrub rituals, life cycle celebrations. Teenagers' first keys experiences marked their often recorded in family scrolls and commemorated with scented soaps as gifts. Gendered practices in women's hammams. Keys work doubled as a community-building exercise. Elders mentored girls in Tellak motions and soap knowledge, transmitting craft and cultural memory. Economic aspects. Soap and MIT sales through Bathhouse shops or external stalls provided income for guild members and apprentices, sustaining local economies. IV. Unresolved thought as you imagine copper cauldrons of lye-steeped soaps shaped into imperial seals, goat hair mitts humming across marble naked flesh, and Tellaks weaving exfoliating rhythms that echo communal pulse. Consider this. In a world of synthetic body scrubs and disposable exfoliating tools, what might we learn from the Ottoman bathhouses' alchemy? Handcrafted soaps, skill-woven keys, and ritualized scrubbing to restore meaning, sustainability, and communal care in our personal cleansing routines. You discovered how Ottoman artisans transformed olive oil and hardwood ash into fragrance, firm soaps, and wove goat hair mitts keys that became instruments of ritual purification. Now, we'll delve deeper into the production networks, guild economies, and trade flows that supplied hammams across an empire spanning 3 continents. You'll trace how soap and mitt workshops organized labor, how quality standards emerged and enforced hygienic consistency, how these cleansing implements circulated through caravanserais and urban bazaars, and how their economics shaped by taxation, monopoly, and guild oversight ensured both accessibility and artisanal excellence. By the end, you'll see that soap and keys were not mere bath tools, but commodities woven into the very fabric of Ottoman urban life. Imperial soap workshops, organization and oversight, Sabanhain structure and management. The Ottoman state recognized soap's civic importance and, early on, integrated its production into palace administration. Workshop hierarchy. Ower Sabanhain, legal soap house, operated under the Imperial Arsenal's Armory Department. These state-run factories produced standardized soap for palaces, military barracks, and select WAQF religious endowment institutions. A Sabanhain Kosk soapmaster reported to the eminent, the palace official responsible for textiles and oils, ulama and physician oversight. Medical scholars from the Suleimani Hospital periodically inspected soap batches, sampling bars for lye residue using litmus tests and ensuring no toxic compounds remained. Their stamps on crates signaled medical approval. Labor and guild integration. Ephemeral apprentices. Each state Sabanhain took on a rotating cohort of 20 to 30 apprentices, sons of guild members, or wukfi dependents, rotating yearly between soap, tile, and paper workshops to foster cross-craft literacy. Master artisans, experienced Sabanku soap makers, held hereditary positions, passing down secret recipes, blending laurel oil, olive oil, and regional additives, for example, rhododendron resin, from Anatolia. Their mastery guaranteed complexity of scent and therapeutic potency. Guild relations. The AHA and SNF guilds in Istanbul and Bursa regulated private Sabanhain operations, enforcing quality through annual inspections and imposing fines for underweight bars or off-spec colors. Quality control and standardization. Tugra marking. All state soaps bore the Sultan's Tugra stamped in hot irons onto freshly poured bars, assurance of state quality and a deterrent against counterfeit soap. Dimensional checks. Ottoman measurements relied on the ACTO, approximately 1.28 kilograms. Inspectors used brass scales stamped with imperial seals. Any deviation beyond plus or minus 5% led to production suspensions until corrected. Fragrance profiling. A panel of 4 Nazawai Esfar aroma assessors convened monthly to smell test cured soaps, noting floral, resinous, or vegetal top notes. Variations prompted recalibration of herb infusion ratios or lye adjustments. 2. The keys economy, from weaving guilds to hammam styles. Weaving guild structures and MIT production, while soap enjoyed state sponsorship. Keys production flourished in private guilds. Guild hierarchy. Nakaslar, Okagi, carpet and weaving lodge encompassed Kese workshops. Master weavers Kalfa oversaw small teams of journeymen Kirak and apprentices, brothers of bathhouses. Quality grades. Keys mitts were categorized into Nisfakasa medium coarseness and Acticasa fine, with price differentials reflected in guild licensed price lists. Material sourcing. Goat hair procurement. Shepherd cooperatives in the Taurus Mountains collected goat hair sheared in spring. Hair was sorted by fiber length, 20 to 25 centimeters for inner lining, 30 to 40 centimeters for outer scrubbing surface. Hemp cultivation. Provincial wuksafs in Rumelia allocated fallow land for hemp, its coarse stalks twisted into durable yarn for sturdy mitt seams. Weaving and finishing. Loom operations. 4-shaft looms produce double-layered mitts, inner soft weave, outer coarse weave. Complete mitts pass through boiling cauldrons of diluted olive oil soap, solution hardening fibers and infusing lingering fragrance. Sanitization and certification before sale. Mitts bore a sewn gilt seal, a small round leather patch embossed, with the weaver's stamp to guarantee sanitation standards, no mildew, consistent texture, and seam strength tested at 5 kilograms tensile force. B. Distribution channels and retail networks. The journey from workshop to hammam stall involved multiple intermediaries, wholesale brokers in major bazaars. Kapalık, Istanbul. Kozahan Bursa licensed brokers. Tucker purchased large batches of soap and mitts, storing them in stone-lined cons where temperature and humidity remained stable. Brokers bundled products into bulk crates, 10 to 20 bars or 50 to 100 mitts, selling them to district hammams at negotiated profit margins of 15 to 20%. Retail kiosks and hammam shops. At bathhouse entrances, small wooden cabinets displayed soap and mitts. Bathers could choose from multiple grades. Common soap: ochre scented, plain olive, premium rose petal bars. Medicated sulfur soaps in bright yellow hues. Keys mitts ranged from coarse 5 aki to fine 10 aki. Hammam proprietors received a fixed percentage, approximately 10% of all soap and mitt sales, an incentive to maintain stock freshness and to educate customers on proper use. Regional trade and taxation. Soap and mitt shipments moved along caravanserai routes to Anatolian towns, Aleppo, Cairo, and even Tunis. Imperial customs records logged 500,000 akka of soap annually exported to Egypt by the 17th century. Guilds lobbied for reduced tariffs on soap, raw materials, olive oil, and hardwood ash, arguing their essential public health role. Sultan Murad IV's 1635 decree cut import duties on olive oil by half, lowering soap prices in Syrian provinces. III soap, keys, and public health. Medical endorsement and epidemic control. Medical integration and institutional use. Simams functioned alongside hospitals and infirmaries. Suleimani Hospital collaboration. The Suleimani Foundation maintained its own sabonhane, producing antiseptic soap variants infused with myrrh and musk for leper wards and post-surgical cleaning, endorsed by Chief Physician Çelebi Nizam in his surgical manual. Quarantine station supplies. During plague outbreaks, quarantine centers on the Prince's Islands used sulfur-impregnated soap and weekly key scrubs to reduce ectoparasite loads. Though imperfect, these measures were noted by European visitors as advanced preventive practices. B. Social welfare and charity distributions. Religious endowments. Vakif underpinned access to cleansing. Free soap Fridays in many hammams endowed by wealthy patrons. Fridays considered auspicious featured complimentary soap and mitts distributed to the poor. Estimates suggest 2,000 bathers received free supplies each week in Istanbul's public hammams. Maternity and pilgrimage support. Women's hammams near Mecca and Medina partnered with pilgrimage endowments to provide special hajj kits containing scented soap, mitts, and post-bath oil, supporting pilgrims' cleanliness rituals before the Umrah bath. For economic decline and the fate of guilds. By the late 19th century, global economic currents disrupted these artisanal systems. Industrial soap imports. European factories flooded Ottoman markets with cheap, mass-produced soap, bar soda-based, heavily perfumed, undercutting local sabonhane prices by 30 to 40%. Ottoman soap makers, unable to match economies of scale, saw imperial sabonhane production have between 1850 and 1900 synthetic fiber introductions. The advent of nylon in the 1930s threatened goat hair keys. Synthetic mitts, marketed as more hygienic and long-lasting, captured 60% of urban market share by the 1950s. Weaving guilds collapsed under foreign competition and shifting consumer preferences. Regulatory shifts. The early Republican reforms abolished many guild protections. Tariffs on imported soap and textiles were lowered to encourage industrialization, further marginalizing traditional sabonhane and keys workshops. The unresolved thought as you consider the intricate networks from imperial soap factories and guild-controlled keys workshops to bazaar kiosks and quarantine stations. Reflect on this. What might it take today to revive small-scale, quality-driven soap and exfoliation economies, balancing modern efficiency with artisanal integrity to reconnect cleansing rituals with community health and cultural heritage? We traced soap's alchemical beginnings from olive oil and hardwood ash in imperial sabonhane to aromatic bars stamped with the Sultan's tugra, and followed goat hair, mitts, keys as they wove through guild economies and hammam stalls into every purification ritual. Now, we explore the twilight of these traditions under industrial competition, their modern-day revival among artisan cooperatives, and the lessons their integration of craft, community, and health offers for the future of sustainable cleansing and communal well-being. Industrial onslaught and cultural erosion. A. The rise of mass-produced cleaning products. By the late 19th century, European soap factories harnessed mechanized saponification and chemical surfactants to churn out vast quantities of inexpensive soap. Ottoman consumers, already buffeted by economic reforms and tariff reductions, found these industrial bars irresistible in both price and flashy packaging. Chemical shift. Modern soaps relied on soda ash, sodium carbonate rather than hardwood, lye, and incorporated synthetic fragrances and dyes at masked impurities. These formulations foamed more vigorously and dried faster on store shelves, a stark contrast to the months-long curing and natural olive oil lather of traditional sabin. Soaps. Market penetration by 1920. Imported soaps accounted for over 70% of Istanbul's retail market, relegating local Tugra-stamped bars to niche heritage shops. The economies of scale made it impossible for small Sabanhain to compete, forcing many imperial and Wukf workshops to see low speed decline of the Keys tradition simultaneously. The Keys myth faced its own upheaval. Synthetic adoption. With the introduction of nylon in the 1930s, bathhouses prized synthetic mitts for their durability and lower maintenance. No more lye soaks or annual retirements. Goat hair and hemp mitt guilds, deprived of apprentices and markets, dissolved, and artisanal weaving knowledge risked vanishing. Loss of ritual context. As neighborhood hammams closed or switched to minimal services, Keses became optional amenities rather than ritual necessities. Tellaks, once skilled in reading skin tone and adjusting mitt pressure, were replaced by attendants with minimal training. Uniformity replaced personalization. See cultural amnesia and heritage threats. This industrial and social shift led to nearly a century of cultural amnesia. Historic hammams silenced. Many smaller bathhouses reliant on soap and key sales for revenue shuttered operations. Their kitchens and stalls, once vibrant with soap bars and mitt displays, fell vacant. Their infrastructure repurposed or abandoned. Erosion of shared ritual. The communal rhythms around soap scrub oil sequences faded, replaced by private bathing rituals and tiled home bathrooms. The multi-sensory communal aspects of cleansing gave way to efficient, solitary routines lacking the kinesthetic and social dimensions that once underpinned public health and solidarity. Rediscovery and grassroots revival. Lay artisan cooperatives and cultural restoration. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, a wave of cultural heritage movements galvanized artists, historians, and social entrepreneurs to reclaim soap and keys traditions. Sabanhain revivals in Bursa, a non-profit cooperative, reactivated a 16th century Wuk of Sabanhain in 2005. Guided by archival recipes and the few surviving masters of Banku, they revived olive oil and laurel oil soaps, aging batches for proper curing and stamping each bar by hand. Sales at heritage markets and specialty boutiques allowed them to pay fair wages to local farmers for olives and hardwood for ash. Kese weaving workshops in the Taurus foothills. A women's cooperative partnered with former guild descendants to teach goats hair spinning and MIT weaving. Participants, often rural women seeking supplemental income, learned to weave double-layered keses, harden fibers in lye baths, and brand each mitt with a hand-carved wooden seal. Their products sold online and in Istanbul's Kukukuma Antiques Quarter found a global audience among artisanal bath enthusiasts. Integration into modern wellness and tourism. These revived crafts found new life within contemporary contexts. Boutique hammam experiences. Luxury heritage hammams like the restored Ayasofya Haram Sultan Hammam offered artisan soap and keys ceremonies, inviting visitors to witness soap-making demonstrations, try their hand at MIT weaving, and receive personalized scrubs with freshly cut goat hair keses. These immersive packages blended history, craft, and wellness, commanding premium pricing that sustained small-scale production. Wellness retreats and spas. Eco-resorts in Cappadocia and the Aegean Islands incorporated hand-harvested olive oil soaps and goat hair mitt treatments into spa menus. Guests emerged from volcanic rock baths to keys scrubs by local Tellaks, reinforcing connections between place, craft, and health. Digital preservation and knowledge sharing. Online platforms have become pivotal in safeguarding and disseminating these traditions. Virtual workshops. Master Sabanku and Keys Kalfa host live-streamed classes covering soap recipes, lye calculations, and weaving patterns, reaching global audiences and inspiring home soap makers and fiber artists. Open source archives. Digital repositories compile historic Sabanhain financial ledgers, guild regulations, and medicinal treatises. Enthusiasts and researchers use these sources to reconstruct accurate recipes and protocols, keeping traditions transparent and adaptable. 3. Toward community-rooted, sustainable cleansing practices. Reflecting on the arc from imperial Sabanhain to artisanal cooperatives, we can distill key lessons for future wellness and community health initiatives. A. Embodied craft and shared knowledge hunts on learning, reviving public workshops where participants engage directly in soap making and mitt weaving fosters embodied learning. This counters the detachment of synthetic, industrial products, grounding users in the material and social processes behind their cleansing tools. Intergenerational transmission like Ottoman guilds, fostering apprenticeship models pairing elders with youth, and craft mentorship ensures skills endure, strengthening communal identity and resilience. B. Sustainable material cycles, local sourcing. Prioritize regional oils, olive, laurel, sustainable hardwood, ash, and animal hair sourced as byproducts of ethical livestock. Practices minimizing ecological footprints and supporting local economies. Circular biomass, composted. Spent soap scraps and mid-fibers can enrich soil for herb gardens that supply. Infusion botanicals echoing the Ottoman Sabonhane's closed loops of resource use. See ritual integration for public well-being community. Bath events organized monthly. Soap and keys days at public baths or community centers where residents scrub, chat, and learn together, echoing the communal purification. Rites that once reinforced social cohesion and public health. Health partnerships. Collaborate with medical practitioners to integrate crafted soaps and scrubs into dermatological or rehabilitation protocols, honoring the Ottoman model of bathhouse. Medicine tied to hygiene and healing for unresolved reflectioners. You recall the copper cauldrons lighting with lice hiss, the delicate floral infusions nestled in soap loaves, and the rhythmic whisper of goat hair midst over warm skin. Ponder this enduring question. In reclaiming the Ottoman bathhouse's craft-based communal approach to cleansing, how might we redesign modern hygiene practices, typically solitary and industrial, into experiences that heal both bodies and communities? Rooting daily rituals in hands-on knowledge, sustainable cycles, and shared celebration. Dawn of the touch. Origins and philosophies of Ottoman bathhouse. Massajuve, bathed in scented steam, scrubbed away the old and felt marble warmth cradle your body. Now, as dusk settles on Istanbul's rooftops, you prepare for the final sensory act of the hammam journey, the Tellak's massage under flickering lantern glow. This gentle, practiced touch did more than soothe sore muscles. It wove together medical theory, ritual pacing, and communal care, guiding bathers from the heat's apex back toward everyday life. In this section, you'll trace how medieval Islamic physicians and Ottoman healers framed touch as therapy, how Tellak's apprenticed in the dual roles of scrubsman and masseur, and how fragrant, warmed oils pressed from olives, infused with herbs, and balanced by physicians became conduits of both physical relief and emotional release. I touch in humoral medicine theoretical foundations long before Western physiotherapy. Ottoman medical thought conceived of touch as a means to restore balance among the four humors, drawing on Galenic and Hippocratic legacies filtered through Islamic scholars. Ottoman physicians prescribed massage to mobilize fluids, ease blockages, and harmonize bodily heat. Humoral dynamics and touch, blood hot and moist, when sanguine excess caused heat sensations. Gentle, broad strokes and cooler oil helped dissipate surplus warmth, aiding venous return. Phlegm, cold and moist in stagnation or lethargy, firm and needing warmed tissues, encouraged lymphatic drainage, and invigorated the skin's surface, counteracting phlegmatic chill. Yellow, bile, hot and dry. Overactive metabolism that bred irritability and dryness benefited from softer, more lubricative strokes using oil blends with cooling herbs like rose and lavender. Black bile, cold and dry melancholic states, often accompanied by muscle tension and joint stiffness, were eased by moderately warm oil. Applications with warming spices, cinnamon or ginger applied in rhythmic percussion. Primary texts and practitioners of 5th Saving Quaglu, 1385 to 1468. In his surgical treatises he detailed massage protocols for post-operative care, prescribing inward to outward strokes to reduce edema around joints and incisions. IBN Sana 982-1037. His canon of medicine described rubbing and smoothing Maswa Tafik as essential for preserving youth and preventing muscle atrophy. Advice later echoed in Ottoman court pharmacy manuals. Late Ottoman manuals, 17th and 18th century compendia codified Tellak techniques, grouping strokes into categories: cat thrusting, rubbing, diab kneading, and Turkum tapping, each mapped to specific therapeutic aims. Massage as ritual transition beyond medical aims. Touch served a ritual function, bridging the intense heat and scrub of the hararet with the cool clarity of the frigidarium. By guiding bathers through a sequence of pressure and pace, Tellaks eased hearts and bodies back to the world, their hands writing a final verse in the poem of purification. The Tellak's path apprenticeship and mastery. Becoming a skilled Tellak required years of dedicated training, combining physical conditioning with medical knowledge and ethical discipline. Entry and early practice. Physical requirements. Candidates, often young men of robust health, demonstrated strength and endurance, able to stand for hours and support bathers atop the Gaktasi without faltering initial tasks. Apprentices assisted senior Tellaks by carrying buckets, maintaining hearth fires for warmed oils, and observing scrubbing techniques. They learned basic strokes on practice mats before ever touching a bather. Medical and herbal education. Tellaks attended lectures by local hakims, learning to identify herbs used in oil blends, calendula for inflammation, marjoram for muscular pain, and understanding drug interactions, for example, avoiding mint-infused oil on wounds. They studied pulse readings and skin examinations to gauge each bather's humoral condition, refining their stroke selection and oil choice accordingly. ethos and etiquette, modesty and respect. Tellaks maintained a respectful distance, draping small oil-soaked pestimal strips to preserve dignity during massage. Their touch was warm yet firm, never invasive, an unspoken covenant of trust. Emotional intelligence. Apprentices learned to read patrons' micro-reactions, tensing at deeper pressure or sighing and release, and adjust accordingly. Empathy became as critical as technique. Certification and community. Standing after years, sometimes a decade of practice, a Tellak demonstrated mastery before a council of peers and physicians, performing a complete thermal and massage sequence on volunteer, writhing under simulated conditions. Successful candidates received a Tellaknama certificate, granting rights to serve in court hammams and receive higher remuneration. 3. Oils at dusk. Formulations and ritual usage. No massage in the hammam was complete without warmed aromatic oil, alchemical blend that lubricated strokes and carried botanical therapeutics deep into tissues. Oil, bases and pressing. Olive oil primacy. Unfiltered, cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil formed the base of nearly all massage blends, prized for its emollient properties and stable shelf life. Animal fats. In colder regions or seasons, a portion of sheep suet or camel hump fat was rendered into soft lard, mixed 1-2-3 with olive oil to maintain fluidity while boosting thermal retention. Herbal and spice infusions. Anti-inflammatory blends. Infusions of calendula flowers and turmeric. Powder prepared in oil baths for 24 hours at room temperature, then gently heated to 40 degrees Celsius before straining. Yielded golden-hued oils that eased joint pain. Cooling essences. Rose petal macerates and lavender buds infused overnight, then lightly warmed, provided fragrant, cooling oils for patrons with excess heat conditions. Warming spiced oils. Cinnamon bark, ginger slices and clove buds heated in oil to extract capsaicin-like compounds, producing a mild warming sensation that relaxed deep muscle knots. Oil preparation protocols. Cleanliness and storage. Oils were stored in dark glass bottles sealed with wax and stored in cool, dark rooms. Tellaks inspected oils daily, discarding any with off smells or sediment above thresholds. Pre-massage warming. Before each session, oils were poured into copper pans set atop low charcoal burners, raised to a precise Y-40 degrees Celsius, warm enough to feel soothing, never so hot as to burn delicate skin. Ritual sequence of application. After the keys, scrub and gentle rinsing. Tellaks swirled oil over hands to distribute heat, then applied long gliding strokes along limbs, working inward toward the heart to support venous return. Rhythmic tapping turcum on areas like shoulders and calves followed, stimulating circulation. A final featherlight smoothing rub across the torso and neck sealed the ritual, leaving skin supple and deeply nourished. IV. Social and spiritual dimensions of massage. Ottoman Hammam massage extended beyond physical relief into realms of social bonding and spiritual reflection. Communal bonding. In large hammams, groups of friends or guild members coordinated visits, receiving simultaneous massages on adjacent slabs. Between strokes, Tellaks allowed space for hushed conversation. Men discussing politics, women exchanging life advice, cementing communal ties in a cocoon of warmth and trust. Life cycle and rite of passage. Young men received their first massage upon entering adulthood, marking passage into communal responsibility. Women nearing childbirth followed gentle massage protocols to prepare the body for labor, while elders sought soothing strokes to ease chronic arthritis. Spiritual resonance. In mosque-adjacent hammams, massage concluded with whispered prayers or contemplations. The stilling of breathing under gentle strokes mirrored Sufi breathing exercises, each exhale washing away not only heat and dead cells, but lingering worldly anxieties. Unresolved thought. As you imagine your Tellak's strong yet tender hands gliding warmed, scented oils over warmed muscles, consider this final question. In an age of mechanized massage gadgets and solo foam rollers, how might we recapture the relational essence of the Ottoman Hammam massage, combining skilled human touch, ritual pacing, and personalized botanical formulations to foster both physical healing and communal connection in our own lives? From touch to tradition, decline, revival, and the enduring gift of Ottoman Massajuve, explored the humoral foundations of touch, followed Tellak's path from apprentice to master, and felt the ritual dance of warmed oils under fiery lantern glow. Now, in this final chapter of Story 6, we chart how Ottoman bathhouse massage weathered the storms of modernization, slipped into dormancy, and today resurfaces in both heritage sanctuaries and contemporary wellness. Through cycles of decline and rebirth, these candlelit strokes remind us that healing touch grounded in craft, community, and care endures far beyond any single era. Modern disruption and the erosion of ritual the advent of mechanical massage and private spas. By the late 19th century, several trends undercut the hammam massage tradition. Privatization of bathing, as indoor plumbing and porcelain tubs proliferated in middle-class Istanbul homes. Families shifted from communal hammams to private bathrooms. The communal rite of steam, followed by Tellak massage inaccessible within tiled domestic spaces, gave way to solitary scrubs and store-bought lotions, mechanical devices, European-style spas. introduced electric vibrators, steam jets, and mechanical rollers promising hands-free massaging. These mechanized treatments gained cachet among urban elites eager for the latest innovations, while falling costs made at-home devices affordable. Further sidelining human Tellaks, professional medicalization, hospitals and clinics claimed exclusive domain over therapeutic massage, relegating Tellaks traditionally unlicensed but deeply skilled to the margins. Regulations required medical diplomas for anything deemed therapy, forcing many bathhouse masseurs to abandon their craft or retrain in institutional settings. These shifts fractured the holistic hammam sequence. Steam, scrub, only fragments Tellaks dwindled. Oil kitchens closed or repurposed, and the shared hum of stone, steam, and skin gave way to antiseptic. Mechanized routines be cultural amnesia and loss of craft with ritual touch. Marginalized crucial transmission. Pathways broke, guild dissolution. The traditional apprenticeship systems that fostered both physical technique and humoral knowledge collapsed under new licensing laws and shrinking demand. Young men no longer saw Tellak as a viable career. Disappearance of oil kitchens. Kitchens lost their mandate to prepare bespoke medicinal oils. Large hammams installed simple dispensers of generic massage oil, eliminating infusion stations and the delicate botanical alchemy that once accompanied touch. Erosion of community ritual, as hammams transformed into perfunctory steam and scrub facilities or luxury tourist spas. The communal exchange, gossip, mentorship, emotional release that accompanied massage became an isolated service rather than a communal rite. By the mid-20th century, authentic Ottoman-style hammam massages survived in only a handful of heritage complexes. They're Tellak's elderly custodians of a near-extinct craft. 2. Heritage revival and the rebirth of ritual touch. Late 20th century rediscovery starting in the 1980s. Heritage movements and wellness pioneers recognized the unique value of Tellak massage. Ethnographic documentation. Scholars recorded elderly Tellak's techniques on video hand positions, stroke sequences, oil blends, creating archives that preserved movements once transmitted only orally. These recordings became reference guides for revived training programs. Restoration of hammam kitchens. Landmark restorations. The Hasaki Harem Sultan Hammam and Galatasaray Hammam reopened side kitchens to recreate infusion cauldron rituals and oil preparation. By resurrecting these spaces, they re-established the logistical backbone necessary for authentic massage sequences. Tellak training schools. Non-profits partnered with bathhouse owners to launch Tellak academies offering multi-year apprenticeships combining anatomy, humoral theory, botanical oils, and hands-on slab practice. Graduates received certification, recognized by both heritage and wellness industries. B. Integration into modern wellness. Revived Tellak massage found new expression in diverse contexts. Heritage spa experiences. Restored hammams now mark its signature. Tellak rituals, inviting guests to experience full sequences. Tepidarium acclimation. Keys scrub, Tellak massage with bespoke oil blends, and cold plunge completed with post-bath tea and storytelling. These high-end packages safeguard the craft economically, supporting Tellak livelihoods. Urban wellness retreats, boutique spas in Istanbul and beyond, integrate Tellak-trained therapists into their teams, offering hammam touch sessions in contemporary treatment rooms. These therapies blend traditional strokes with modern anatomy knowledge, bridging past and present. Medical partnerships. Physical therapists collaborate with Tellaks to create hybrid protocols for rehabilitation combining medically informed stroke depth with ritual pacing, and botanical oils demonstrated effective for chronic back pain and mobility recovery. 3 lessons for future communal care. The revival of Ottoman bathhouse massage illuminates broader principles for embedding healing touch in contemporary culture, craft preservation as community health apprenticeship models. The Tellak Academy exemplifies how structured, multi-generational training preserves embodied skills and fosters community identity. Similar models could sustain other tactile arts, midwifery, elder care, massage, pediatric touch therapies, ensuring knowledge endures beyond commercial cycles. Cultural exchange by inviting guests into immersive heritage rituals. Resurrected hammams foster cross-cultural understanding and respect for traditional knowledge, reinforcing that communal health practices enrich societies more deeply than commodified, standardized treatments. B. Ritual sequencing for holistic restoration pace transitions. The Tellak massage's position within the larger hammam sequence exemplifies how crafted transitions, teamed to scrub to touch to cold, guide the nervous system through phases of stimulation and relaxation. Modern spas might reframe treatments as cohesive journeys rather than disjointed services, emphasizing narrative and ritual arcs. Multisensory coordination. The integration of warmed oils, soft lighting, subtle scents, and mindful touch underscores the power of multisensory design. Wellness environments that choreograph sight, sound, smell, and touch can achieve deeper therapeutic effects than uncoordinated modalities. See community rituals. beyond spa walls, public touch gatherings, inspired by hammam solidarity urban communities. It might revive public touch circles, monthly gatherings in bathhouses or community centers where trained Tellaks volunteers and participants exchange brief, consensual massages in a communal, non-commercial setting, reinforcing social bonds and reducing isolation. Interdisciplinary health networks. The historical collaboration between physicians and Tellak suggests modern healthcare could benefit from integrating traditional touch practitioners, osteopaths, tuina therapists, indigenous multidisciplinary care teams, enriching treatment options and honoring diverse healing traditions. For reflective resonance, as you envision a Tellak's steady hands gliding warmed, herb-infused oil across your back under the flicker of oil lanterns, recall that each stroke is more than technique. It is a vessel of history, community, and care. In a world where touch is often digital or transactional, the Ottoman Hammam reminds us healing arises not merely from hands-on technique, but from rituals woven into community life where skilled touch, paced transitions, multisensory design, and shared experience converge to restore both body and belonging. From steam myths to measured moisture, origins of the caldarium controversy, UV felt the tepidarium's gentle warmth and the heroet's purifying heat, scrubbed dead skin with goat hair keys, and surrendered to candlelit massage. Now, step into the caldarium, the hottest chamber of the hammam. Man pause at the threshold of a centuries-long debate. How hot is too hot? How much humidity heals? And when does steam become suffocating? In this section, we trace the origins of the caldarium's design and the medical controversies it sparked. You will encounter Byzantine engineering precursors, Galenic humoral prescriptions, 16th century Ottoman physicians' experiments with temperature and humidity, and early user complaints recorded in Waqf court registers. Through these technical, medical, and social lenses, you'll see how the caldarium's ideal climate was not a mere architectural byproduct, but the culmination of spirited debate over health, comfort, and the limits of human tolerance. Byzantine foundations and early Ottoman innovatings. Roman and Byzantine prototypes. Roman thermi legacy. Roman public baths like Constantinople's baths of Zeuxippus featured caldaria, heated by hypocausts and supplied with near-boiling water from aqueduct-fed boilers, those serving imperial citizens. These spaces were rarely accessible to the broader populace. Byzantine adaptations. Medieval Constantinople's Byzantine baths preserved Roman heating, but financial decline led to maintenance lapses. By the 13th century, many furnaces lay cold, vaults cracked, and a hazy distrust of too intense heat grew among the clergy, who associated excessive thermal exposure with spiritual impurity. Ottoman rebirth of the caldariamama Sinanzi. Standardization in the 16th century. Sinanzi's grand hammams to Kagoloklu and Rustam Pasa baths introduced robust caldaria. He raised hypocaust furnace capacities and installed dual-layer flues, allowing floors and walls to reach 45–48 grados bajo cero. His architectural plans survive in the imperial archives, specifying a 1:10 furnace to chamber volume ratio to sustain peak temperatures for up to 6 hours per day. Courtyard water management. Ottoman engineers rerouted cooler spring water from adjacent aqueducts through marble-lined conduits beneath caldarium floors, tempering extreme heat and preventing carbonization of oils and plaster. An innovation ensuring consistent temperature without scorching surfaces. 2. Galenic humoral prescriptions and the Kalidariuma humoral theory applied to heat. Galenic heat classification. Galen taught that heat had degrees: primum calidum warm but gentle, secundum stimulating sweat, tertium purging humors, and quartum potentially dangerous burning. Ottoman physicians mapped these two hammam chambers, tepidarium as primum, lower hararet as secundum, upper benches as tertium, and rarely used supercaldarium. Benches near the dome as approaching quartum. Therapeutic targets: chronic rheumatism. Warmth to secundum levels for 10 to 12 minutes weakened joint stiffness without taxing cardiac function. Edema and dropsy, extended stays at tertium intensity, mobilized fluid in extremities but required strict physician supervision. Mental humors for melancholic or phlegmatic temperaments. Lower intensity caldarium exposure was preferred to invigorate spirits without triggering overheating. Ottoman medical texts on caldarium uses Arafidin Sabanquoglu's observations. He cautioned that excessively high heat risked frying the vital spirits Ruai Hayat, recommending that even robust bathers never exceed 50 degrees Celsius and always alternate with cooler interludes. 17th century Istanbul Medical Council physicians convened at Suleimani Mosque's Wukfo office to debate caldarium heat charts. They tested temperatures using floating glass bulbs marked in Derahot, and agreed to standardize upper bench temperatures between -45 degrees Celsius. Their resolutions were inscribed on marble plaques in several palace hammams. 3. The humidity factor, measuring moisture in the caldarium. Steam versus dry heat debate. Comparisons with dry saunas. Travelers to Ottoman lands often contrasted hammam steam with European wood smoke saunas, while European accounts praised dry heat's clarity. Ottoman physicians asserted that humid heat penetrated more deeply, opening pores more effectively. Early hygrometric experiments. In the early 18th century, Palace Dr. Ibrahim Effendi introduced a crude hygrometer paraffin-coated paper strips that curled at different humidity levels to calibrate steam density. He recorded ideal caldarium humidity at 70 to 80%, balancing skin hydration with avoidance of oppressive condensation. B. Architectural. Humidity controls. Perforated domes revisited. The caldarium's star holes were slightly enlarged up to 3 centimeters to allow partial venting of excess steam, preventing drip hazards on marble benches. Wall flue dampers. Tellak's manipulated small brass dampers within vertical flue channels to throttle steam release, adjusting ambient moisture in real time according to patron volume, weather and health prescriptions. For user complaints and Wuk for court recorded grievances over heated chambers. Wuk for court registers from Hammam, Barling. Note at least 27 petitions by elderly women alleging scalding on upper benches. Investigations required Tellaks to lower furnace fire intensity and install additional venting, demonstrating users' agency in thermal governance. Steam overkill. Male patrons at Kagalaklu Hammam in 1811 filed complaints that humidity had so saturated the chamber they could not breathe comfortably. The court mandated weekly inspections and fines for Tellaks who failed to maintain proper damper operation. B. Enforcement of thermal standards. Walked inspectorate. A specialized hararet Nasdari heat inspector conducted unannounced visits, carrying portable thermometers and hygrometers. Infractions defined as exceeding 48 degrees Celsius or humidity above 85%. For more than 10 minutes invoked escalating fines and temporary shutdowns, until repairs or operational changes were made. User education notices posted at hammam entrances illustrated ideal thermal progression in simple diagrams. Bench levels, recommended durations, and humoral cautions ensuring even novices could advocate for safe CONDITIONSV. Unresolved thought. You stand at the entrance to the caldarium feeling steam swirl through perforated domes and imagining Tellaks adjusting dampers beneath stone benches. Reflect on this question. Given the intricate balance of temperature and humidity codified by centuries of architectural, medical and legal debate, how might modern spa design, often relying on fixed sauna or steam settings, relearn the art of dynamic climate control, tailoring heat and moisture in real time to individual needs? Rather than assuming one-size-fits-all, we trace the caldarium's origins from Byzantine prototypes and Sinan's hypercost refinements to Galenic heat degrees, early hygrometry and Wukfei court interventions. Now, we immerse ourselves in the lived experience of caldarium bathers, the Tellaks and inspectors who continually tuned its climate, and the medical practitioners who documented its effects. You will move from personal reflections recorded in diaries and petitions to technical adjustments logged in architectural plans, and see how physicians armed with pulse charts and rudimentary thermoscopes the caldarium's therapeutic boundaries. Through these converging perspectives, the chamber emerges not as a static furnace but as a dynamic ecosystem, responsively co-crafted by users, attendants and healers. Voices from the steam bathe, testimonials and diaries, personal narratives of heat and healing. Merchant's Journal, Istanbul, 1698. I entered the caldarium at afternoon light, and the air embraced me like molten marble. My cough, persistent from autumn chills, eased as pearls of sweat formed at my temples, yet I dared not ascend to the upper tiers. My shoulders trembled at their furnace's kiss. I bowed instead at the lower bench, where heat still blended with honeyed steam, and I think I inhaled Persian mint, for my chest unclogged as though winter loosened its grasp. A Lady of the Court Topcopy, 1743. The caldarium in the harem. Sultan Hammam feels like St. Paul's grotto warmed by 1,000 candles. My telecommand of Ape poured rose-infused water at my feet, then guided me to the highest slab. There, the steam's weight pressed my hair against my neck. In that crucible, I felt past worries melt, court intrigues, the Grand Vizier's debts, the Sultan's distant gaze. Yet the smell of frankincense kept me anchored in faith, reminding me that sweat too can be an offering. A physician's case notes Üsküdar, 1782. Patient Astavo Mason, age 52. Complaints of rheumatic heaviness. Calibrated exposure, 7 minutes on lower bench, 3 minutes mid-bench, none above. Observations improved limb flexion by 15% after 3 sessions. Pulse stabilized from 88 to 76. Caution, excessive upper bench. Exposure led to tachycardia and night sweats. Recommend follow-up at milder humidity, 65% in next cycle. B. Collective petitions and community standards. Court registers reveal that user feedback shaped caldarium norms. Neighborhood grievances in Üsküdar 1755-1760. A series of petitions demanded removal of new decorative slits in the dome that reduced steam density by 10%. Bathers argued the change denied the soul its proper sweat. Inspectors responded by resealing selected holes and restoring humidity levels. Guild appeals. Leather workers whose trade hardened their skin petitioned for coarser key scrubs. paired with slightly lower caldarium heat by approximately 2 degrees Celsius to prevent mass. Medical councils concurred, adjusting official bench temperature guidelines in artisan district hammams. These dialogues illustrate a participatory system, users, guilds, and physicians in continual negotiation over the chamber's microclimate.ii. Technical fine-tuning, architectural and mechanical modifications, evolving hypercost configurations, variable pillaret heights. Early caldaria used uniform palais, hypercost columns 35 centimeters high. By the 17th century, palace masons introduced staggered pillar 30 centimeters near entrances, rising to 40 centimeters under upper benches to channel hotter air upward, creating a vertical temperature gradient without altering furnace firepower. Architectural drawings from the Kagala archives show these differential pillar layouts, annotated with expected temperature increases, plus 3 degrees Celsius, per 5 centimeters of additional height. Adjustable hearth grates. Standard fixed grates gave way to hinged grate systems, allowing Tellaks to vary fuel bed depth, lifting or lowering grate height by 10 to 15 centimeters. Changed combustion intensity, enabling real-time adjustments without stoking delays. Inventories list these hinged grates as tab-lock or movable, with maintenance protocols recommending monthly lubrication to prevent steam corrosion seizing. B. Advanced ventilation. Controls Multizon dampers, where earlier designs featured a single damper per wall flue. 18th century innovations introduced multi-zone dampers, stacked brass plates, controlled by a central lever, offering for discrete positions from closed to fully open. A single lever shift could alter humidity by 5 to 10%. Qasim Effendi's 1769 treatise on steam houses describes calibrating damper settings to match. External barometric pressure, advising vents 50% open under high-pressure rainy weather to avoid oversteaming and 75% closed under low-pressure dry weather to lock in moisture. Dome aperture adjustments. In response to user complaints about intermittent dripping from the dome's holes, masons implemented removable stone plugs, saptane, that could partially cover holes. Tellaks adjusted these between sessions, customizing the number of apertures to modulate both light and steam escape. 3. Medical debates and emerging data. Quantifying temperature and humidity effects. Early Ottoman physicians experimented with proto-scientific measurements. Floating thermoscopes, glass bulbs partially filled with colored water, floated in caldarium basins. Their water level changes driven by boiling point shifts gave approximate readings. Clinicians noted bubble formation, 42, 45 and 48 degrees Celsius markers etched into a brass ring floating around the bulb. Notes record plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius accuracy. Humidity. Papers. Following Ibrahim Effendi's innovations, hygrometric papers treated with salt and gum Arabic were hung on spokes in the dome. Their degree of curl indicated relative humidity bands. Flat strips for 70%, half-curled for 70 to 80%, and full-curled for 85%. Health outcome correlations. Physicians compiled case series, correlating temperature-humidity duos with symptom resolution rates. AET Bawu Suleimani report cites 80% improvement in chronic bronchitis after 6 sessions at 45 degrees Celsius and 75% humidity, compared to 50% at 40 degrees Celsius and 60% humidity. B. Controversial findings in professional rivalries. Disputes arose as data accumulated overuse syndrome. Some physicians, such as Dr. Mehmet Hamdi of Edirne 1802, warned that repeated high-intensity caldarium exposure led to heat fatigue, chronic lethargy, and digestive weakness, arguing for tighter session limits, max 2 per week. Others defended more liberal use for robust individuals. Humidity versus heat primacy. Debates split between wet heat advocates who favored steam's penetrating power and dry heat proponents who lamented steam's chest-constricting effects. Trial spitting to chambers. 1 fully steamed. 1 partially vented showed faster sweat onset in humid environments, but more rapid post-bath recovery in lower humidity rooms. Fueling ongoing controversy. Although no single doctrine prevailed, the vibrant discourse pushed hammams to adopt multi-zone controls, letting each patron or physician's prescription come alive in stone and steam.iv. Institutionalizing best practices. By the late 18th century, imperial and municipal authorities codified caldarium standards, synthesizing user experience, technical possibilities, and medical consensus. The 1791 Hammam Regulations, a landmark imperial edict Firman Y Hammat outlined caldarium guidelines. Temperature band, IC -46 degrees Celsius on lower benches, Y -48 degrees Celsius on upper benches. Measured by standardized brass skewers inserted into heated basins for 10 seconds. Humidity range, 70 to 80%. Assessed via hygrometric papers. Replaced weekly. Session durations, maximum 15 minutes per bench level, with mandatory 5-minute interludes in the Kamikan or tepidarium equipment maintenance. Annual inspection of hypercost seams, flue dampers, and dome apertures. Fines for any deviation beyond plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius or plus or minus 5% humidity. These regulations, inscribed in Ottoman Turkish, Arabic, and Greek on stone tablets at major hammams, represented a crowning moment. The caldarium's ethos distilled into enforceable standards. Training and certification. Municipal bath inspectorates established academies to certify hammam managers and medical liaisons, examination components, practical assessments of damper adjustments, furnace management, and case study evaluations of patient thermal prescriptions. Code of conduct emphasized user consent, individualized attention, and prompt reporting of adverse reactions. Certification badges, bronze stars worn on Tellak turbans, signaled compliance. Building patron trust and professionalizing the caldarium craft. The unresolved point: as you imagine this chamber as both furnace and laboratory, a nexus where personal narratives, mechanical ingenuity, and medical metrics entwined. Ponder this challenge. How might modern spa and wellness centers learn from the Ottoman caldarium's co-creative model, where users, technicians, and health experts continuously negotiated settings to design dynamic climate-controlled environments tailored in real time to individual physiology and preference, rather than fixed menu options? We've seen how the Ottoman caldarium emerged from Byzantine prototypes and Sinan's engineering, how Galenic humoral theory and early hygrometrics shaped ideal heat and humidity, and how bathers, tellaks, physicians, and inspectors co-created its dynamic microclimate. Now, we examine how this ecosystem weathered the tides of modernization, inspired heritage revivals, and illuminates 21st century approaches to adaptive thermal environments both in spas and beyond. By tracing decline and rediscovery of the caldarium's responsive design, we uncover enduring lessons about co-creative climate control, embodied health, and the power of participatory standards. A decline of the dynamic caldarium, technological standardization and loss of feedback loops with an advent of centralized heating systems and mechanical steam generators in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The fine-grained responsiveness that characterized the Ottoman caldarium gave way to one-size-fits-all conditions, fixed boilers and radiators. Steam produced in high-pressure boilers fed radiators or steam pipes, calibrated to deliver a uniform temperature, often Y-70 degrees Celsius, without dampers or hypercosts, eliminating real-time modulation of heat and humidity. Automated controls, devoid of human judgment. Early thermostats and float valves maintained target temperatures but could not account for fluctuating patron loads, external weather shifts, or individual tolerance. The nuanced feedback loops, partitions, Tellak adjustments, inspector fines were replaced by rigid safety margins and mechanical interlocks. Regulatory overreach and risk aversion. Modern building codes focused on fire safety and scald prevention, capping maximum steam, humidity, and temperature broadly, but ignoring health benefits of dynamic climates. Caldarium morphed into sterilized hot rooms rather than responsive therapeutic chambers. As a result, the living system of Ottoman caldarium climate, honed by centuries of participatory fine-tuning, atrophied into static environments, losing its capacity to adapt to both communal and individual needs. 2. Heritage rediscovery and re-interactive caldaria. Revival of participatory climate practices. Starting in the 1990s, heritage hammams and pioneering wellness centers began re-embracing Ottoman principles of collaborative thermal design. Reopenings with authentic controls, restored hammams like Harem Sultan and Galatasaray reinstalled multi-zone brass dampers and adjustable hearth grates, allowing tellaks to modulate heat and humidity on the fly. Training manuals once thought lost resurfaced, teaching tellaks to read pulse and perspiration as real-time indicators for climate adjustments. User-centered feedback. Some heritage sites introduced climate preference cards where patrons note desired heat, humidity levels, and record their experience. Tellaks then tailor damper settings and bench assignments accordingly. Over months, this crowdsourced data informs weekly adjustments, echoing historical WUCUF petitions and inspector directives. Dr. Tellak collaboration. Modern clinics partnered with hammams to offer physician-supervised caldarium sessions. Real-time vitals, heart rate, skin temperature are monitored, guiding tellaks to tweak damper or grate positions, resurrecting a form of humoral calibration with 21st century precision. B. Adaptive caldaria in contemporary spas beyond heritage. Restorations. New wellness designs draw on caldarium wisdom. Modular steam chambers. Wellness architects specify steam rooms, split into microzones each with independent temperature and humidity controls. Patrons move among zones seeking optimal comfort, effectively self-tuning their thermal journey. Interactive control panels. In some luxury spas, panels allow clients or their attending therapist to adjust local steam intensity, creating individualized sanctuaries within a single chamber. Visual displays correlate dial settings to historical Ottoman heat, humidity bands, educating users in thermal science. Sensor-driven feedback loops. Cutting-edge installations embed temperature, humidity sensors, and infrared cameras to track occupancy patterns and local climate levels. Software algorithms translate these inputs into automatic damper and boiler grate adjustments, mirroring Tellak's centuries-old expertise through digital proxies. III lessons for adaptive climate design. From the Ottoman caldarium's participatory governance to modern sensorized steam rooms, we distill for enduring principles. 1. Co-creative climate control. Historical insight. Ottoman bathhouses thrived because bathers, Tellak's physicians, and inspectors authored caldarium conditions through petitions, medical counsel, and hands adjustments. Modern application. Empower users and practitioners with real-time controls and feedback mechanisms. Cards, sensors, panels, fostering shared ownership of climate. Collective data can then refine preset thermal profiles, ensuring environments evolve with community preferences. 2. Multimodal sensing for health. Historical insight. Tellak's gauged air quality by feeling steam flow, testing scent concentration, and observing sweat patterns. Physicians measured pulse and skin tone. Modern application. Integrate biometric monitoring, heart rate, skin conductance, thermography, and environmental sensing. Temperature, humidity, air velocity into steam spaces. Use this multimodal data to tailor conditions to both physiological and perceptual comfort. Marrying ancient embodied sensing with contemporary biofeedback. 3. Ritualized transition. Architecture. Historical insight. Physical thresholds. Arched doorways, threshold strips, lattice screens, modulated exposure, guiding bathers through incremental heat, humidity stages. Modern application designed as spatial sequences vestibules, warm-ups, main steam chambers, cool-down retreats with varying climate profiles, clearly demarcate transitions through architectural or visual cues, helping users anticipate and adapt. 2. Changing conditions. Reducing thermal shock and enhancing comfort. 4. Humidity as therapeutic. Variable. Historical insight. Ottoman debates reintegrated humidity as a primary therapeutic dimension, measured, adjusted, and codified alongside temperature. Modern application. Elevate humidity management in spa and building design. Beyond temperature set points, specify target humidity bands, informed by health outcomes. Respiratory therapy, skin hydration. Use dynamic vapor distribution systems, steam injectors, humidified air inlets controlled by algorithms that respond to occupancy and user preferences. IV. Final reflection. As you imagine the caldarium's star-punctured dome, the hiss of steam through perforated vents, and the subtle dance of damper plates choreographed by Tellak's hands or by smart algorithms, consider this final question. In creating tomorrow's wellness in public spaces, how might we recapture the Ottoman caldarium's co-creative multisensory climate ethos, merging user agency, skilled stewardship, medical insight, and adaptive technology to craft environments that evolve in harmony with both individual bodies and communal rhythms? Mapping heaven in stone. Origins of the hammam's starry dome. Traversed heated chambers, scrub and oil, and felt the caldarium's measured embrace. Now lift your gaze to the sky above the hammam's dome, pierced with geometric apertures that flood steam rooms with star-like points of light. In this section, we trace how these celestial ceilings emerged from Byzantine lantern vaults and Seljuk caravanserai skylights, how mathematicians, masons, and mystics collaborated to encode cosmic order into architectural form, and how the interplay of light, geometry, and steam crafted an ethereal atmosphere that guided bathers from body to contemplation. From lantern vaults to Islamic geometry, Byzantine precursors, cistern lanterns. Constantinople's surviving cisterns, like the Basilica cistern, featured stone lantern chambers that filtered faint daylight through grilles, creating mottled illumination beneath vaulted ceilings. These early lanterns inspired Ottoman architects to adapt light sources rather than rely on open skylights, which risked rain ingress. Monastic cloisters, Byzantine monasteries used small, regularly spaced openings in refectories to admit controlled daylight for the principal delicate apertures, creating calm, focused light. Migrated into secular public baths, Seljuk, caravanserai, influency, hand skylights. 12th-13th century Anatolian caravanserais incorporated central lantern vaults to ventilate smoke from hearths and admit starlight for nocturnal travelers. Masters of these desert structures learned to size openings for maximum draft without compromising shelter. Geometric frame. Seljuk masons favored simple, star-shaped hole 6 and 8-pointed framing constellations above coursing camels. These motifs translated readily into the decorative vocabulary of later Ottoman architects. Islamic geometric theurgery patterns. Islamic artisans developed complex side-glued tile networks, or giri, composed of decagons, hexagons, and bows. Mathematicians at madrasas refined construction rules, using compass and straight edge to generate quasi-periodic patterns mirroring cosmic harmony. Symbolic numerology. The number of points on a star called 5, 6, 8, or 12 carried, meaning 5 for the pillars of faith, 6 for divine order, 8 for gates of paradise, 12 for lunar months. Architects encoded these in dome rings to remind bathers that beneath steam lay the rhythms of the heavens. 2. Designing the dome. Geometry into masonry structural layout. Concentric rings. Domes were built in horizontal stone rings. Mason to math inscribed full-scale geometric layouts on plaster templates before carving each stone block. Star holes sat at intersections of radial ribs and concentric rings, ensuring structural stability around each aperture. Hole placement. Small, central, oculus 2 cm wide formed pole star markers. Surrounding rings featured increasing numbers of holes, 8 in the first band, 12 in the second, mirroring the zodiac and framing moon cycle remembrance. Light modulation. Size gradation. Inner ring holes were larger to admit more daylight in low-light chambers. Outer rings, smaller to maintain heat retention. Typical inner holes measured 3 cm. Outer rings 1.5 cm. A balancing act between illumination and steam containment. Angled inlets. Some masons tilted holes slightly toward the dome's center, directing beams downward in brief shafts that shifted as the sun moved. This dynamic play of light guided bathers' attention, creating ephemeral paths across steam-laden marble. Mystical and medical. Purpose. Healing, illumination. Physicians believed filtered starlight and soft daylight aided circadian reset and gentle eye rest. Steam blurred edges. Star-like points offered focal anchors, reducing headaches and promoting visual comfort. Spiritual resonance. Bathers reclining on the central slab saw constellations woven overhead, crafting a liminal space where bodily purification met cosmic reflection, a reminder that inner renewal echoed the heavens' immutable geometry. 3. Installation and early critiques. Construction process. Master masons worked atop wooden centering frameworks, carefully fitting each voussoir with adjacent piers. After each ring's completion, wooden yokes were removed to test stability before proceeding. Stone templates drawn by master surveyors were hung on dome interiors, ensuring each star hole aligned precisely with intended geometric centers. User reactions and debates enthralled patrons. Travelers' diaries praised stars in the steam, citing the calming effect of moving light patches on heated misty surfaces. Conservative critics. Some religious leaders objected, naming lighted apertures distractions from pure worship, and sought to cover dome holes during Ramadan nights to encourage prayer rather than daydreaming. Waqf inspectors responded by adding wooden shutters to allow seasonal closure without structural alteration. 4. The starry dome's unresolved wonder. As you reclined beneath the dome, steam drifting in soft plumes, star holes puncturing the stone canopy. Consider this open question. How did the hammam's celestial ceilings, where engineering, geometry, and mysticism converged, shape bathers' inner journeys? And what might modern architects learn from these ancient skylights about crafting therapeutic spaces that guide both body and spirit through light's gentle choreography? Crafting celestial geometry. Construction, optics, and sensory choreography. You've traced the star-pierced dome's origins from Byzantine lantern vaults and Seljuk caravanserais through madrasa geometry and imperial inscriptions. Now, we've entered the mason's workshop and the bathhouse below, revealing how masons, surveyors, and tellaks collaborated to transform stone and light into living poetry. In this section, we'll explore the precise construction techniques and optical principles behind the holes, how shifting daylight and lantern glow choreographed moving constellations on steaming marble, the interplay between light, heat, and humidity, and the ways bathers perceived and responded to these luminous patterns. By the end, you'll understand the dome not as static architecture, but as a dynamic, multi-sensory instrument, one that tuned body and mind to cosmic rhythms. Mastering geometry from plan to domain. Full-scale templates and layout drawings scribing the dome interior plaster skins before stone setting. Masons applied a thin coat of lime plaster to the undersurface of each ring's centering formwork. As each voussoir dome block was laid, master surveyors used dividers and compasses to scribe concentric circles and radial lines directly onto this plaster. Star patterns. The geometric pattern, often an 8-pointed star in the inner ring, a 12-pointed in the next, was established by dividing the circle's circumference by the desired point count, marking equidistant nodes. Connecting these nodes with straight edge and compass created star polygons whose intersections dictated star hole centers. Stone cutting and numbering. Voussoir carving. Artisans pre-cut stone voussoirs on ground level, chiseling each to match the arc length between radial lines. Each block was numbered in Arabic numerals and oriented to align its carved star hole recess. Hole drilling guides. Small pilot holes were marked at each star hole center. Masons then used iron-tipped punches and bow drills to create clean circular openings. First with a smaller bit 1.5 centimeters, then reamed to final diameter 3 centimeters for inner holes, 1.5 centimeters for outer. Removal of centering and final adjustments. Frame withdrawal after mortar set. Carpenters lowered wooden centering in phases, first beneath lower rings, then middle, then apex, lowering gradual load transfer to stone ribs. Leak sealing. As steam tests began, any vapor leaking through misaligned holes or mortar cracks was sealed with a fine lime sand mortar paste, preserving both pattern clarity and structural integrity. B. Calculating light paths, optical consideration and solar altitude and seasonal angles. Sun path mapping. Architects consulted astronomical tables to chart the sun's declination at solstices and equinoxes. Inner ring star holes were oriented to admit the lowest winter sun shafts, while middle rings caught higher summer rays. Beam angles. With powdered chalk placed on the dome rim, sun shafts left ephemeral streaks of chalk dust on interior walls. Tests guiding final hole placement. Diffusion and steam scattering effects. In empty dome tests, direct shafts produced crisp light spots. In steam-filled trials, fine droplets scattered light, softening edges and creating glowing halos around each aperture. Masons adjusted hole bevel, sparing the interior lip at a 15-angle 2 control beam width, ensuring gentle diffusion rather than harsh shafts. Lantern integration for night. Use lantern chambers. Above each star hole sat a shallow recess or lantern chamber accessible via rooftop walkways. Masons built tiny stone ledges within these chambers to hold oil lamps or small glass pane lanterns. Glass filters. Some lanterns use colored glass, smoky gray or pale amber to mellow candle flicker and prevent glare. Heat-resistant ceramic. Sockets stabilized the flame, while tiny ventilation slots in the chamber sides drew in fresh air and expelled combustion gases without drowning out the lantern's glow. 2. Sensory choreography. Light, steam, and spatial experience. Daylight plays dynamic constellations, moving light patterns time-lapse in marble. As the sun arced, each star hole cast pins of light that traversed across walls and floor. Bathers reclining on the Gogek Tassi saw these motes drift gently like fireflies, an entrancing spectacle timed to the hours of the day. Seasonal variation. In midwinter, low sun angles illuminated inner rings only, concentrating light near the dome's crown. In midsummer, high sun-filled outer rings, bathing benches in a soft prism glow. This natural variation attuned bathers' circadian rhythms to seasonal shifts, spatial focus, and contemplation centering the mind. Bathers reported that following the slow arc of light eased racing thoughts. The steady, predictable drift of each mote provided a meditative focal point, much like modern mindfulness apps but embodied in the surrounding architecture. Communal synchrony. Groups noticed shared light markers gliding simultaneously across slabs, reinforcing a collective awareness of time's passage and fostering unspoken bonds through shared observation. B. Candlelight rituals. Nocturnal illumination. Evening lantern ceremonies. Lamp lighting. As dusk fell, Tellaks climbed to rooftop lantern chambers, igniting small lamps at calculated intervals in a ring first, then middle, then outer, mirroring daylight's progression and guiding bathers from interior warmth toward cooler outskirts. Flicker and steam. The interplay of flickering flame and rising steam created dancing motes that seemed almost alive, casting shifting patterns on curved surfaces. Bathers describe these nocturnal constellations as both mysterious and comforting, an ephemeral echo of heaven's unchanging stars. Temporal markers or intervals. In some palace hammams, lamp brightness was dimmed in stages every hour, serving as a subtle timer for patrons navigating their thermal sequence. A gentle change in ambient light signaled that it was time to move benches or transition to the frigidarium. Musical accompaniment. Occasional sessions included oud or ney accompaniment, timed to lantern dimming, linking visual and auditory cues to deepen the ritual's immersive arc. 3. Mechanical responses. Maintaining the celestial effect. A. Steam management for visual clarity. Steam density control. Intermittent venting. Tellaks manipulated water flue dampers to reduce steam buildup during peak light phases, thinning the fog so that starhole beams remained discernible. Outside peak thermal periods, steam venting was reduced to preserve warmth within the chamber. Sequential venting strategy. A scripted sequence opened middle flues first, then outer flues created brief clearing windows where patrons could visually savor star patterns before the steam rose anew. Surface. Coatings. Hydrophobic lime wash. Walls and dome interiors were coated with breathable lime wash mixed with beeswax emulsion. This treatment repelled water droplets, preventing condensation from dulling light. The wax also imparted a gentle sheen, enhancing beam reflections. B. Maintenance rituals. Hole cleaning and recalibration. Inspections. Maintenance teams descended into steam chambers quarterly to brush each starhole interior with fine brass bristles, removing soot and mineral deposits, then realign any shifted stones by inserting small mortar wedges. Chalking tests. Similar to initial construction trials, powdered chalk was reapplied to the dome rim before solstices to verify beam alignment, guiding minor hole adjustments where seasonal drift had altered light paths. Lantern chamber. Upkeep. Glass pane replacement. Glass panes soot-coated by lamp smoke were replaced weekly. Artisans ground new panes from local silica lime mixtures, ensuring proper fit and minimal color distortion. Ventilation. Duct cleaning. Tiny vents around lantern chambers were cleared monthly to prevent soot buildup that could smother flames or overheat the chamber for perception, and psychological impact. The architectural psychology's sense of transcendence. Architects drew on early theories of light as divine presence. This slow, deliberate movement of light through steam lent bathers a sensation of participating in cosmic rhythms, reducing self-consciousness and inviting contemplative stillness. Biophilic resonance. Modern environmental psychology highlights the restorative power of natural light patterns. The hammam's star holes prefigured these insights, using dynamic light to reconnect humans to natural cycles within an enclosed, controlled environment. NMENTB, embodied memory generational. Tellak's recounted childhood memories of following a single moat across the dome until it disappeared, an early lesson in focus and patience. Many patrons describe these experiences as touchstones in personal narratives, recalling the exact position of their favorite star hole years later. Cultural symbolism and chroniclers likened the starlit dome to the prophet's night ascension Mi'raj, embedding the hammam's architecture within broader spiritual imaginations. This layered symbolism deepened the sensory experience, merging bodily purification with metaphysical reflection. The unresolved thought as you imagine ascendingly carved stone ribs, framing drifting light specks, a gentle hush settling over steel slabs. Consider this final question. What might contemporary architects and wellness designers learn from the hammam's celestial ceilings, where precise geometry, shifting light, and controlled steam coalesce to create modern interiors that guide occupants through embodied journeys of attention, renewal, and cosmic connection? From vault to vision, decline, revival, and the future of celestial skylights who've charted the hammam's star-pierced dome from Byzantine lantern precedents and Seljuk caravanserai skylights through Ottoman geometric mastery and multisensory choreography of light and steam. Now, we conclude our exploration by tracing how these celestial ceilings fell into neglect, how heritage advocates resurrected their luminous magic, and how modern designers reinterpret the starhole principle to craft environments that guide body and spirit. Through patterns of decline and renewal, we discover enduring lessons about the interplay of architecture, light, and human perception, and how you might carry these insights into contemporary spaces of rest and reflection. I.e., clips of the starhole neglect and loss by the late 19th century. Sweeping changes in technology, taste, and urban development dimmed the hammam. Its celestial splendor, industrial lighting, and architectural modernism. Introduction of electric lighting in the early 20th century led many hammams to muzzle their starlit domes, installing dense glass panels or plastering over apertures to prevent drafts and simplify maintenance. Electric bulbs hung from iron hooks provided uniform illumination but erased the dome's shifting constellations. Neglect of craft and memory as skilled masons and surveyors passed away without apprentices. The precise knowledge of scribing, drilling, and aligning starholes vanished. Restoration efforts in the mid-century often focused on structural waterproofing and heating systems, sidelining the aesthetic and sensory dimensions of the dome. Urban pressures. Many neighborhood hammams underwent piecemeal renovations to accommodate plumbing, ventilation, and urban code requirements. Dome lantern chambers deemed fire hazards were sealed permanently, and steam-heavy environments gave way to dry sauna conversions, leaving one celestial vaults dark and silent. Over decades, the dynamic interplay of light and steam, a signature of Ottoman bath architecture, but disappeared from the urban fabric, relegated to fading memories in archival photographs. 2. Heritage reawakening, rediscovering the stars. Beginning in the 1980s, a confluence of cultural preservation movements, architectural scholarship, and experiential tourism sparked renewed attention to the hammam's luminous heritage. Documentary surveys and digital archives. Architectural historians undertook exhaustive surveys of surviving Ottoman hammams, photographing domes from beneath and above, mapping hole patterns, and recording oral histories from elder towns. These records, digitized in international databases, formed blueprints for faithful restorations. Sensitive restoration projects. Landmark restorations of the Kagaliklu and Galatasaray hammams prioritized reopening starholes, blocked apertures using non-invasive techniques, replacing modern patchwork with plaster matching 16th century mortar composition. Lantern chambers were rebuilt, and custom oil lamp mounts installed to recreate nocturnal constellations. Experiential marketing. Heritage hammams began offering starlit steam evenings, timed to coincide with new moon or meteor shower nights, under low wattage LED lanterns that mimicked candle flicker. Bathers once again reclined beneath moving light patterns, forging a direct line to centuries-old sensory rituals. These interventions rekindled public awareness that light and architecture are inseparable partners in crafting restorative environments. 3. Modern interpretations. From pixels to plaster. Inspired by the Ottoman celestial ceilings, contemporary designers across disciplines adapt the starhole paradigm to new contexts. Interactive light ceilings. Architects commission parametric models, digital simulations that generate variable hole patterns based on space dimensions and seasonal sun paths. CNC cut panels in gypsum or wood replicate these patterns in co-working spaces. mindfulness studios, and residential foyers, animating interiors with natural or programmable light sequences. Smart glass and dynamic apertures innovation. Glass allows skylights to transition from opaque to clear on demand. Controlling light entry like Ottoman damper plates controlled steam. In wellness centers, programming mimics historical daylight rhythms, soft dawn glows, midday pinpoints, evening dusks, supporting circadian health. Light-steam hybrids experimental installations integrate steam, nozzles and perforated ceilings. In micro-hammam pods, fine mist particles diffusely scatter overhead light beams, recreating the soft halos once seen in calderia. These multi-sensory booths promise quick resets in busy lobbies or airport lounges, conjuring the hammam's atmospheric alchemy in compact form. Across scales and materials, the principle endures. Orchestrated apertures and controlled steam light can evoke wonder, focus attention, and foster serenity. 4. Lessons in design weaving light, ritual, and place reflecting on centuries of celestial domes. For core design principles emerge for contemporary spaces seeking to harness architecture's luminous power. Contextual geometry. The Ottoman dome patterns arose from local materials, solar paths, and cosmological symbolism. Modern designers should likewise root skylight geometries in site-specific factors, regional sun angles, cultural numerologies, or community narratives, ensuring that light patterns resonate with place and purpose. Dynamic sensory as hammam domes modulated light across thermal stages, built environments can choreograph light changes to guide users through purposeful sequences. Awakening, focus, relaxation, enhancing mental and physical well-being. Programming should consider both natural cycles and human activity rhythms. Participatory calibration. Tolia thrived on user feedback and Tellak adjustments. Contemporary projects can adopt participatory calibrations, preferences for light intensity, color temperature, and temporal patterns, then tuning skylights or digital systems accordingly. Fostering collective ownership of space. Material function integration. In hammams, structure and ornament touches, ribs, star holes served functional goals of support, ventilation, and light diffusion. Modern implementations will succeed when aesthetic gestures double as technical solutions, acoustics, daylighting, thermal comfort, and wayfinding embedded in a single geometric logic. By weaving these threads, geometry sequence, participation, and material integration, designers can conjure spaces that feel both innovative and deeply attuned to human rhythms. The final reflection. As you imagine steam swirling in soft haze around dancing light specks overhead, contemplate this question: what might it look like to blueprint a contemporary sanctuary, an office, a library, a wellness pod where every aperture, material, and light sequence is choreographed not just for function, but to evoke that same sense of cosmic wonder and embodied calm? The Ottoman celestial ceilings bestowed on generations of bathers. Secrets behind the steam. How hammams became confessional chambers. You've experienced the caldariums, measured heat, watched constellations dance overhead, and felt the gentle release of oil massage under candlelight. Yet, beyond the physical purification, the hammam served as a crucible for social rituals, a place where whispers carried weight, confidences were shared, and communal bonds were forged in steam's embrace. In this first section, you'll step behind the marbled domes and steamy benches to discover how bathhouses became sites of counsel and camaraderie, where merchants finalized deals, women exchanged life advice, guilds negotiated labor disputes, and even political plots found there. Stage will explore the hammam's layout as social architecture, the roles of tellaks in patronage and fostering trust, the etiquette of conversation amid steam, and the surprising ways that a simple bathhouse bolstered community cohesion across the Ottoman Empire. The hammam as social theatre, a spatial design for interaction. Communal slabs. Gergek Tussi. At the heart of every hammam lay the central marble slab, the Gergek Tussi, wide enough for several bathers to recline shoulder to shoulder. In the tepidarium's glow, strangers formerly anonymous found themselves side by side, their bodies heated to a uniform calm that eased social barriers. Bench arrangements. Around the slabs, concentric marble benches offered tiered seating. Higher benches in the hararet signaled status or endurance. Lower benches catered to the less heat-tolerant. Yet, in the steam's haze, distinctions softened some, and artisans often shared benches, inviting cross-class conversation. Alcove niches, private niches, along walls just large enough for 2 or 3 provided semi-enclosed spaces for more intimate exchanges. Their dappled light and gentle hush made them ideal for whispered counsel, matchmaking discussions, motherly guidance, or confidential gossip. Acoustics and confidentialities. Diffusing reliefs, shallowly carved arabesques and niches, as seen in Story 2, served not only decoration but acoustic control, scattering voices so that adjacent conversations blended into a diffuse hum rather than carrying clearly across the room. Steam as a veil. The constant swirl of mist acted as an auditory and visual veil. Lowered voices lingered in the steam, allowing discreet exchanges without fear of overhearing by unintended listeners, while heat-enforced relaxation softened vocal tones, encouraging gentle confidences to roles and rituals of Count Tellak as trusted facilitator beyond scrub and massage. Skilled Tellaks often acted as de facto hosts and guides to hammam newcomers, their gentle direction suggesting bench positions. Offering sips of rosewater, moderating steam intensity created a climate of care that extended to conversational trust. Keeper of secrets Tellaks, bound by professional ethics and steeped in oral tradition, learned to listen without judgment. In many records they appear as confidants to bathers' personal troubles, marital strains, business challenges, or communal disputes, consoling with a towel, a scrub, or a few sympathetic words. B. Patronage and protection. Endorsement. Ottoman elite sultans, pashas, wealthy merchants often endowed local hammams, securing their benches or niches with gilded inscriptions. These dedicated areas functioned like reserved chambers, where patrons could meet business associates under the cover of their weighted reputation. Immunity of the slab in some guild districts. Master craftsmen negotiated with hammam owners to guarantee that any disputes aired on the Gojektasi would not be prosecuted outside, encouraging frank discussion and collective problem-solving without fear of external retribution. 3. Women's hammams, circles of solidarity, female-only hours and etiquette separate sessions. Official hammam schedules allotted distinct hours or entirely separate women's buildings for female patrons. In these less crowded, decoratively softer spaces, women held court over shared benches, their laughter and low murmurs giving life to interior chambers often closed to male ears. Advice networks, mothers to be exchanged birthing tips. Young brides gleaned cooking and household economies. Widows found sympathetic ears for grief and financial planning. The steam chamber became a rotating salon, where practical wisdom circulated organically. B. Midwives and herbal counsel embedded practitioners. In provincial hammams, licensed midwives and herbal healers maintained regular visits. Between benches they dispensed poultice recipes, demonstrated postnatal soaks, and guided new mothers through gentle water exercises. Their presence blurred lines between leisure and health clinic under steam's soothing canopy. Herbal baskets. Women carried small woven baskets filled with mints, rose petals, or thyme sprigs as in story 4. Sharing a pinch of herb from basket to basket forged social ties and underscored collective stewardship of bodily well-being.iv guild. Diplomacy and commercial negotiations. Artisan assemblies in steam guild meetings. Butchers, weavers, blacksmiths, and carpenters often held pre-market or pre-festival gatherings in hammam. Amid the thrum of steam and soft call of water, guild elders could deliberate on pricing, labor quotas, and intergenerational transfers, with the heat's languor fostering open-mindedness. Conflict resolution. Minor disputes over unpaid debts or delivery mishaps were aired on benches before settlement by guild representatives. The hammam's neutral ground warmed equally for all, symbolized impartial arbitration. B. Merchant diplomacy. Travelers' alliances. Caravanserai merchants and ship captains used urban hammams as informal consular venues. Stripped of weapons and robes, they negotiated cargo sharing, routes, and tariffs in the tepidariums. Equitable mist. Confidential bars of soap. In some records, merchants exchanged sealed soap bars, each bar containing scrolls of proposed terms, leaving them on benches for counterparty pickup. The soap's life redesign ensured messages survived steam without dissolving. V. The unresolved prelude. As you sit amid the mingled voices, women's laughter, guild stratagems, merchant whispers beneath the starlit dome and within the calibrated warmth. Consider this question: how did the hammam's layered architecture and unique social protocols transform a simple bath into a crucible of trust and counsel? And what might modern public spaces borrow from this model to foster genuine communal dialogue and collaborative problems? Steam-born alliances, negotiation, networking, and healing. Dialogues. You've glimpsed the hammam's hidden chambers of counsel, where women share wisdom in private niches. Guild leaders broker truces on warm marble, and Tellaks hold confidences as sacred. Now we'll dive deeper into how the bathhouse's spatial choreography and thermal rhythms fostered structured yet fluid social exchanges. The subtle art of hammam negotiation, the rituals that safeguarded privacy, the roles of water and heat as social lubricants, and the surprising ways that steam-infused conversations shaped community resilience. By tracing patron networks, dispute resolution protocols, and even crisis management within the hammam's walls, you'll see how steam-bound counsel became an engine of Ottoman civic life, and negotiation rituals on the marble slab. The protocol of voice enveloping overtures before any private discussion, whether a merchant's contract or a mother's secret. The parties observed a brief ritual, stepping together onto the central Gojektasi, exchanging 3 respectful nods, and placing a folded pestimal over the heart. This unspoken agreement signaled mutual respect and trust, marking the transition from casual bathgoer to confidential interlocutor, maintaining hum of hush. The hammam's design ensured that while benches and niches offered acoustical discretion, the ambient steam and carved reliefs diffused sound. Negotiators practiced strategic softness, speaking in mid-range timbres that carried only 2 benches away, preserving privacy without awkward silence. Be the dance of thermal positions bench dynamics. Negotiators moved through tepid, hararet and kemikan in a deliberate progression, mirroring conflict escalation. Initial terms aired in the warm embrace of the tepidarium 37 degrees Celsius, where mild heat encouraged openness. Formal concessions occurred in the hararet's lower bench, approximately 42 degrees Celsius, harnessing deeper perspiration to symbolize commitment. Final ratification or oath took place in the cooling kemikan, approximately 20 degrees Celsius, where lifted spirits returned to clarity, solidifying agreements, spatial hierarchy and status. Seating order implicitly conveyed social rank. Senior guild members claimed upper hararet benches, while junior associates remained on lower tiers. Yet, the steam's equalizing effect, flattening distinctions of fabric and footwear, softened status markers, enabling more equitable dialogue once thermal camaraderie took hold. 2. Guild governance and collective problem-solving. From dispute to resolution on the slab case study. The weavers' dispute is Nick 1723, when 2 weaving families clashed over shared water rights from a local fountain. They brought their elder representatives to the Iznik Hammam over 3 sessions. In the steam chambers, they alternated presenting grievances first, the spinner's shortage of rinse water, then the dyer's accusations of improper waste discharge. Each day Tellak's facilitated exchanges, ensuring neither party spoke over the other and that steam intervals enforced calm. On the final day, a compromise ritual unfolded. Both parties poured equal bowls of rosewater onto the gogek tossi, symbolizing shared usage, and sealed the pact with a communal key scrub, reinforcing solidarity through ritual cleansing. Guild council norms. These councils followed codified protocols. Statements limited to 3 minutes. Interruptions discouraged those who spoke out of turn, paid for communal refreshments in the kemikan. Any insult required a formal apology in writing, preserved by the guild's Divan Council records. The steam's hush underscored the solemnity of these norms, transforming social friction into structured dialogue via economic collaboration and market alliances. Setting assemblies. Before major fairs adorn in spring, Bursa in autumn, merchants of silk, spice, and metal convened in hammams to calibrate pricing guidelines. The steam's equalizing effect, both physical and psychological, dissuaded egregious price gouging. Under the marble dome, merchants found mutual benefit in moderate rates that balanced profit against communal goodwill, shared risk and mutual support at times of crop failure or caravan losses. Influential patrons hosted sponsored hammam days, offering free baths to affected artisans, while warm water soothed aching muscles. Organizers distributed loans and organized cooperatives within the steamy alcove so that solidarity, not exploitation, emerged from collective hardship. Women's networks, from motherhood to market beyond domestic advice. Prenatal council. Pregnant women frequented designated women's hammams, smaller, courtyard-adjacent buildings, or reserved morning hours in larger baths. In the gentle warmth of the tepidarium, midwives led sessions where experienced mothers demonstrated water-based breathing techniques. Hip rotations on the gugektasi and herbal steam blends, often mint and chamomile, to ease nausea. Younger women observed, absorbing tactile and verbal guidance, strengthening intergenerational bonds. Entrepreneurial exchanges. Skilled seamstresses and silk embroiderers met in kemikan alcoves to inspect bridesmaids' trousseau works, exchanging pigments and thread recipes. These sessions, often hosted by wealthier patrons, laid groundwork for small-scale female-led enterprises, with sample showcases held mid-steam, dresses draped over benches, and orders drafted on palm leaves. Social welfare and care networks. Charity coordination. Women's hammams, especially those tied to charitable waqfis, organized post-visit distributions. Elder attendees received extra pest. Impoverished families collected leftover olive oil soaps. Orphaned apprentices gained free keys, mitts. These practices, coordinated in steamy councils, reinforced communal safety nets. Health surveillance. Informal health checks occurred in steam, noted rashes or coughs in neighbors, and alerted midwives or physicians, who then offered follow-up at nearby infirmaries. The hammam functioned as a decentralized public health sentinel, its steam-laden benches doubling as low-key clinics for Tellaks and the ethics of Confession A. Confidentiality as professional virtual oath of discretion. Upon certification, swore an oath before guild elders and physicians. What is heard in steam remains in steam. Breaching this code by relaying private information to outsiders incurred fines, suspension, or even expulsion from the guild. Patron protector role. Tellaks not only scrubbed and guided thermal progression, but also mediated sensitive exchanges when a conversation risked overheating or discomfort. They interjected with a splash of rosewater or a suggestion to change benches, diffusing tension with professional tact. Gendered trust and excess cross-gender boundaries in co-ed palatial hammams. Elite women's sessions sometimes included male tellaks under strict supervision by female natives, ensuring both cultural propriety and high-quality care. Within Steam's veil, this arrangement fostered mutual respect, balancing privacy needs with the best available expertise. Empowerment through secrecy. For women in patriarchal societies, the hammam provided rare spaces of autonomy free from male oversight. Mothers and daughters negotiated dowries, inheritance claims, and even political affiliations within steam-charged confidences. Unresolved. Point as you picture baths of whispered strategies, midwives' soft instructions, merchants' sealed agreements, and tellak's vigilant discretion amid swirling steam. Reflect on this question. What might contemporary communal spaces, a co-working lounge, a community center, or even a digital steam room, learn from the hammam's delicate architecture of confidentiality and co-presence, designing environments that both facilitate intimate dialogue and safeguard the trust essential for collective well-being? Steamy bonds and lasting legacies. How hammam confidences shaped Ottoman society. They witnessed how the hammam's architecture created sanctuaries for whispered counsel, how negotiation rituals on the Göktasi fostered guild unity, how women's networks wove midwifery and micro-enterprise into steam sessions, and how Tellak safeguarded every confidence with professional discretion. Now, we conclude Story 9 by exploring the enduring outcomes of these steam-bound alliances. The ways hammam confidences fortified communal resilience, influenced legal and economic institutions, and left a legacy of trust-based civic engagement. We'll examine case studies of social change catalyzed in steam, trace the institutionalization of hammam-born norms, and reflect on how these soft-spoken bonds can inspire modern practices of governance and community building. Forging civic resilience in steam. Collective crisis response form in relief councils. 1787, when Eastern Anatolia suffered crop failures, local notables convened daily in the Van Hammam's tepidarium to coordinate relief. Between steam-soaked exchanges, they pooled sheep fleeces, medicinal herbs, and dispatched aid caravans to outlying villages. The hammam's semi-private alcoves allowed candid discussions free from Ottoman tax collectors' scrutiny, expedited by the trust nurtured through repeated shared scrubs and covenants sworn on Rosewater dam towers. Post-earthquake reconstruction. Bursa, 1855. Following the devastating Bursa earthquake, guilds used the hammam as a strategic planning hub. Stonecutters and plumbers detailed rebuilding proposals on wax tables. Women's committees organized shelter and childcare. Merchants arranged credit lines to fund materials. The steam chambers, egalitarian benches, dissolved class barriers, enabling laborers to address nobles as equals in urgency, and unprecedented flattening of hierarchy that accelerated relief efforts. Legal reforms born in steam-mocked court innovations. Judges, attuned to frequent hammam petitions, introduced mediation sessions within the bathhouse precincts where disputing parties aired grievances before impartial WAQF-appointed arbitrators amid steam's calming embrace. These ad hoc tribunals, praised for their speed and privacy, inspired formal Kononai hammam clauses in the 1840 Tanzam, legal reforms enshrining mediation as a complement to public courts. Labor rights precedents at Arstempa, a hammam. Artisan groups negotiated fair wage agreements in steam meetings documented in guild ledgers. When stonemasons and blacksmiths couldn't agree, the bathhouse manager himself, a former Tellak, invoked steam injunctions, binding both sides to abide by a third-party mediator's terms. These precedents influenced later Ottoman labor codes, recognizing collective bargaining as a valid dispute resolution method. 2. Institutionalizing the hammam ethos, codification of confidential dialogue, guild charters, and confidentiality articles. Inspired by the hammam's oath-based discreetness, several major guilds inserted hammam clauses into their founding charters. These articles mandated that all internal discussions, pricing, membership disputes, apprenticeship assignments occur first in a private steam room setting before public committee meetings, preserving both confidentiality and cohesion. Municipal steam councils. In the late Ottoman era, Istanbul's municipal administration established quarterly hammam dalali councils, advisory bodies of neighborhood representatives, tellaks, and physicians. These gatherings, held in the hygiene-regulated Kagalaklu hammam, addressed urban sanitation, water supply, and traffic concerns. Their success in developing early public health measures, water quota systems, tuberculosis awareness campaigns, demonstrated the power of steam-facilitated civic networking. Cultural narratives and literary reflections. Divan poetry and steam. Poets like Nedum and Yahya Kemal extolled the hammam as the world's true confessional, weaving verses that likened steam to the breath of truth. Their works, often recited in Kamikan alcoves, reinforced the cultural mythology of the hammam as a place for unvarnished sincerity. Travelogues and ethnographies. 19th-century European travelers chronicled hammam conversations as anthropological, gold mines, merchant diaries, women's oral histories, emergent lexicon of local idioms. These texts influenced Orientalist scholarship and paradoxically informed Ottoman reformers' own ethnographic self-reflection. 3. The Hammam ethos in a global context. A. Comparative communal rituals, Japanese sentu and Finnish sauna parallels. Both Japanese communal baths and Finnish saunas developed similar norms of shared vulnerability and open dialogue. Yet, historians note that Ottoman hammam's integrated role in commerce, law, and health was uniquely expansive, suggesting that design features alcove niches, bench hierarchies, thermal sequencing directly shaped the depth and scope of communal exchange. Middle Eastern majlis influence. The Arab majlis, a gathering space for council, shares the hammam's emphasis on hospitality and confidentiality. In some Gulf states, policymakers now host initial diplomatic talks within heritage-restored hammams, blending ritual purification with political negotiation, echoing Ottoman practice. B. Modern civic design lessons, spatial sequencing for dialogue. Urban planners and architects draw on hammam principles by creating multi-stage public pavilions, entry halls for acquaintance, semi-enclosed lounges for private talk, central forums for decision-making, mirroring tepidarium niches, and gegektasi. Pilot projects in Barcelona and Melbourne demonstrate improved community engagement when citizens navigate ritualized spatial progressions. Thermal and acoustic modulation, applying steam chamber acoustics. Modern civic spaces incorporate curved, relief-textured walls and controlled humidity rooms to facilitate confidential discussion. Early trials in restorative justice centers show participants disclose more openly under these calibrated conditions of warmth and hushed resonance. 4. Reflective resonance, as you rise from the warm marble, steam clinging to skin and memory of intimate exchanges alive in pores and muscles. Ponder this question. What elements of the Ottoman hammam's architecture and social protocols, its layered spaces, thermal choreography, trusted facilitators, and silent codes of we weave into today's communal environments to cultivate deeper trust, more empathetic dialogue, and resilient civic bonds, crossing water's threshold from household fountains to shoreline hammams. Twilight descends over the Bosporus and the last ferry's horn fades into the strait's hush. You find yourself drawn to a different kind of waterfront, the shoreline. Hammams where the gentle lapping of water replaces courtyard fountains, and moonlight silverbacks vast marble slabs. Here, under the nocturnal expanse, the ritual of steam converges with the elemental pull of the sea, creating a distinctive bathhouse experience that blends urban intimacy with maritime calm. In this first section, we explore how the shoreline hammam arose from ancient harborside ablutions, how its architecture and water management adapted to saline proximity, and how moonlit hours reshaped the bath's social rhythms by tracing the fusion of seafaring traditions, Ottoman engineering, and lunar lore. We'll see how these water's threshold baths forged a unique nocturnal sanctuary on Istanbul's greatest artery, Eye Harbor. Origins, ablutions at the water's edge, pre-Ottoman precedents. Long before the Ottomans laid foundation stones, Constantinople's denizens paced the city walls and docks at day's end, stopping to rinse dust and brine from body and soul. Classical port practices. Greek and Roman sailors, returning from sea voyages, often performed simple ablutions on the rocks at shore at first, lighter under torch glow at night, dipping arms and splashing faces with seawater to clear pores and sharpen senses for market bargaining. Byzantine conduits. Some coastal monasteries and imperial cistern complexes piped fresh spring water to small harbor chapels, where officers and traders cleansed hands and feet before entering sanctuaries. Inscriptions reference midnight water lights, suggesting nocturnal ritual cleansings intertwined with devotional vigils. Be Ottoman shoreline hammams, a civic initiative. When Mehmet II's fleet surged through the strait in 1453, the Sultan recognized both strategic and social value in formalizing shoreline bathing. Vitality for sailors and soldiers. Early Ottoman administrators built rudimentary bathhouses at key piers, Kasımpaşa and Üsküdar, supplying scrubbing facilities to crews offloading in the Sultan's service. These initial structures were wooden pavilions with simple hearth-fired boilers. Ukfim, endowments for public good. In 1555, Hüseyin Ağa, an admiral of the Imperial Navy, endowed a stone hammam at the Sarıburnu promontory as Vakif Charter, stipulated nightly free entry for lower-deck sailors and fishermen, recognizing that clean hands made for safer ropes, and clean bodies for clearer judgment on shifting tides. Over the next century, successive sultans and dignitaries endowed shoreline bath, knitting them into the urban fabric as both public health nodes and maritime way stations. Architectural adaptations. Marble masonry and marine proximity. Shoreline hammams balance traditional hammam design with innovations suited to salty air, tidal influences, and nocturnal operation. A foundation and flood mitigation. Raised plinths. Bathhouses near high tide lines were built on elevated stone plinths about 60 to 80 centimeters above average sea level, using denser Byzantine spolia for lower courses, resisting saltwater erosion. Waterproof mortar. Masons employed hydraulic lime mortar, mixed with crushed brick and pozzolana that set underwater, preventing wave splash infiltration. In some hammams, a hidden channel beneath the floor allowed periodic tidal flushing, carrying away surface salts. B. Cooling corridors and sea breezes. Sea-facing verandas adjacent to the Kamikin changing room. Shallow arcades with open arches faced the Bosporus at night, cooled by sea breezes and filtered through lattice wooden screens. These corridors served as natural cool-down zones between sessions. Ventilation shafts. Engineers exploited coastal winds by situating upward flues to align with prevailing summer breezes. Inlets drew in cooler air from the strait, reducing reliance on frigidarium plunges and tempering the caldarium's extremes. See mirror pools and moonlit. Reflection. Shallow reflective basins off the main dome chambers. Hammams installed narrow, waist-deep basins lined with dark marble to catch moonlight. Bathhouse paused here to rest, watching silvery patterns ripple on water and diffuse through star holes overhead. Symbolic duality. These mirror pools echoed the strait itself, a microcosm of the Bosporus, reminding bathers of the unity between freshwater steam and saltwater expanse, between interior ritual and exterior cosmos. 3. Nocturnal rhythms and lunar lore. The shoreline hammam's prime hours unfolded under the moon's watch, its cycle woven into bathing customs. A. Evening sessions and timekeeping post-Maghreb opening. Sure, hammams typically opened after the evening prayer Maghreb, when fishermen returned with their catch and urban laborers completed daily markets. Lantern towers atop domes signaled the bathhouse readiness, visible from passing boats. Midnight curfews. In winter months, hammams closed at midnight to conserve wood and discourage nocturnal hauntings. In summer, extended moon baths ran until the final tahajjud call, inviting devout patrons to combine prayer and purification. B. Lunar humoral adjustments. Waxing versus waning months. Physicians suggested gentler heat and shorter sessions during waxing moon weeks, when bodies were thought more receptive to humoral influence, and bolder scrubs in waning moon periods, aligning with bodily ebb tides. Tidal synchrony. Some masters claimed that bathing during high tide amplified therapeutic water pressure in mirror pools, enhancing mineral exchange through pores. While no formal studies confirmed this, the lore persisted in popular ballads. Beneath the full moon's mirror, the body finds its flow. At Bosporus tides, the soul is cleansed below. Were social currents, community and commerce at night. Nocturnal shoreline hammams became vital arenas for social exchange, distinct from daytime rituals. A fisherman's guild and market networks. Announcements. Before dawn auctions at the Eminune fish market. Fishermen convened in nearby hammams to negotiate vessel repairs, crew shares and risk pooling for storms. Heated debates unfolded in steam, tempered by ritual scrubs and mutual respect. Supply chains. Fishmongers discussed delivery routes to Üsküdar bazaars over mirror pools, arranging mule transport by daybreak. These steam-charged meetings kept Istanbul's fish markets fluid and responsive. B-Nustide Watch Alliance. Security and solidarity. Watchmen gatherings. City watchmen, army patrolling. Night streets found refuge in shoreline hammam. Under cloak of steam and moonlight, they swapped patrol logs, shared intelligence on smugglers, and coordinated baton rounds, strengthening communal defense through hushed steam. Heated councils. Merchant escorts. Traveling merchants stopping at caravanserai piers used hammams as safe rooms before nocturnal departures. Water and heat soothed travel fatigue. The semi-public environment deterred highwaymen, while the Tellak's oath of discretion protected confidential cargo ledgers. V. The unresolved tide as you emerge from the steaming dome, salt air on your face. Moonlight guiding your steps toward the Bosporus's rhythmic pulse-ponder. This question: how did the shoreline hammam's unique confluence of steam ritual, maritime environment, and nocturnal hours shape relations between land and sea, labor and leisure? And what can modern waterfront cities learn from these water's threshold sanctuaries about integrating public bathing, commerce, and communal life along their own shores? Tidal transition. Steam shore. And the rhythm of nocturnal bathing, having stepped from the city's bustle into the shoreline hammam's moonlit embrace, and traced its architecture and lore. You now join bathers as they move through the specially tuned ritual of nighttime waterside bathing. In this section, we follow you from the cooling veranda where salt-laden breezes mingle with steam through the tepidarium's gentle welcome, the hararet's intensified glow, and back to the Bosporus edge. Along the way, you'll witness how tides, lantern signals, and lunar phases orchestrated thermal sequencing, how water management adapted to saline proximity, and how communal rhythms, fishwives' gossip, watchmen's reports, seafarers' oaths played out in steam's hush, by inviting both land and sea to meet beneath the domes. Shoreline hammams created a nocturnal choreography that aligned body, community, and cosmos in a singular nightly rite. From veranda to tepidarium, welcomed by sea breeze, schooling arcades, and first threshold sea air prelude. You pause under the veranda's open arches, cool Bosporus breezes carrying faint salt and brine. Wooden lattice screens filter gusts into gentle eddies, carrying away sweat and signaling a moment of calm. Before the heat, lanterns hung here cast soft amber pools, marking this as both a transitional and contemplative space. Veranda etiquette. Patrons pause briefly to unwrap shawls and sandals, exchanging nods with arriving fishermen and fishwives. The shared vernacular have, "You've seen good catch tonight," blends with the hush of lapping waves, setting a convivial tone before the ritual's interior stages. Be into the tepidariums, gentle embrace, saline steam introduction. Through a low arch, you enter the tepidarium at roughly P-38 degrees Celsius. Steam here bears a faint temps of residual salt drawn from mirror pools and airborne. Sea spray enhancing pore opening and lending a subtle tonic effect. Reflexive water ritual. A Tellak offers a small copper bowl of mixed well and seawater cooled slightly to tepidarium warmth. You splash your face, tasting the faint mineral notes, and inhale the blended scent of sea and steam, anchoring you in this unique coastal hammam milieu. Hararet's heightened heat ritual sequencing by moon phases, lunar timing and thermal pacing waxing moon vigor in the week following new moon when the lunar glow intensifies after dusk. Hararet benches are stoked more fervently, furnace grates lowered to boost floor temperatures by 2 degrees Celsius over standard. This phase aligns with seafarers' traditions of harnessing lunar energy for bodily renewal. Waning moon restraint. As the moon wanes toward new phase, Tellaks maintain gentler fires, prioritizing humidity over raw heat. This modulation matches fishwives' lull in nocturnal labor, reflecting cyclical rhythms of work and rest. Saltwater infusion techniques mirror pool recycle after tepidarium use. Steam condensate mixed with slight sea salt from mirror pools into settling cisterns beneath the hararet. This mineral-rich water, warmed again in boilers, is dripped onto marble benches in fine streams, delivering a softly exfoliating saline mist. Herbal brine elixirs. On mid-bench tiers, Tellaks release brass bowls containing seawater infused overnight with local sea fennel and thyme, gently simmered as hot steam envelops these bowls. Aromatic salt spray carries marine botanicals respiratory benefits into the mist. III frigidarium by the shore cooling with coastal renewal. Sea vent plunge pool stool basins. The shoreline hammam's frigidarium features 2 adjacent plunge pools, one fed by spring water, the other by piped seawater diverted through oyster-lined channels. You stand between them, feeling the springs' crisp chill or the seawater's brisk embrace, each offering distinct therapeutic sensations. Tidal synchrony at high tide. A hidden valve admits a trickle of fresh seawater into the saline plunge, ensuring gentle circulation. At low tide, the valve closes to conserve supply. Tellaks time each plunge to tidal charts, optimizing water temperature by natural influx rather than laborious bucket lifts. Cooling rituals and social exchange shared silence. Bathers line both pools' edges, dipping alternately and sharing nods rather than words. The mingled lapping of stone-edged water with distant waves fosters a profound shared hush, an unspoken communion of the city's nocturnal heartbeat. Post-plunge exchange. Emerging from the brine pool, fishmongers compare tide heights and fish bites. Sailors confirm evening forecasts by noting the sea's chill. These practical exchanges, miniature councils in swimwear, demonstrate the shoreline hammam's dual role as wellness retreat and maritime salon for re-emergence from steam to shore's quietude. Veranda departure. Rituals out kiss tea ceremonies. Back on the veranda, a low tea table appears, offering powdered black tea steeped with lemon peels and a pinch of sea salt. You sip slowly, letting the saline sweetness round out thermal contrast, while the Bosporus breeze dries remaining dampness. Sandaled return, swapping the pestamol for sandals. You step toward the Kese, the moon's path mirrored in the steaming's tidal traces on the plinth. A final nod to water's dual life as ritual medium and living element. Nocturnal social currents. Boatlight reflections from the veranda's edge. Illuminated boats drift past, their lanterns strewn across calm water. Bathers wave, exchanging nocturnal greetings, an ephemeral network of social warmth contrasting the bathers' heated interiors. Anticipation of dawn. As you depart, the first lark emerges over the Golden Horn. Within hours, shoreline hammams will empty until post-dawn reopening, yet this night's steam-borne camaraderie endures in friendships sized by shared shivers, deals sealed in salt, and confidences carried by cooling breezes out across the Bosporus unresolved. Tide having traversed the shoreline hammam's unique fusion of sea and steam cycling through veranda, tepidarium hararet, saline plunge, and back beneath moonlit vaults ponder this enduring question. How might modern waterfront cities reimagine their public bathhouses and communal spaces to blend natural bodies of water, thermal ritual and nocturnal gathering, crafting nightly sanctuaries that honor both urban vibrancy and elemental rhythms, dual sanctuaries, origins and structures of segregated bathing through the hammam's heat, steam and confidences. We've journeyed bodies and souls together, yet within Ottoman society. This communion unfolded along gendered lines, from separate buildings to staggered hours. The design and ritual of hammams created parallel sanctuaries, one for women, one for men, each shaped by social norms, privacy needs and distinct communal functions. In this first section, we explore how gendered hammams arose from early Islamic jurisprudence and Byzantine precedents, how architecture and scheduling enforced modesty and solidarity, and how these dual spaces fostered unique cultures of care, commerce, and counsel among women and men. By tracing legal debates, endowment records, and spatial blueprints, you'll see that gendered hammams weren't vessels of rigid segregation but carefully calibrated arenas balancing privacy, social support, and civic inclusion. Legal foundations, and early policies. Islamic jurisprudence on modesty and mixed bath in Quranic and Hadith guidance. While the Quran emphasizes modesty, it does not explicitly forbid mixed bathing. Early jurists interpreted relevant Hadith statements of the Prophet Muhammad differently, some advocating separation to protect honor, others allowing mixed family bathing in private domains. School debates. The four major Sunni madhabs weighed in. Shafi jurists strongly discouraged mixed public bathing, citing potential for impropriety. Hanafi scholars granted local authorities discretion, often deferring to customary practice. Maliki and Hanbali opinions varied regionally, reflecting cultural contexts in North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Legal consensus. By the 16th century, the Ottoman Kazak's chief judges issued directives preserving mixed bathing only within private harem quarters. Public hammams thus institutionalized gender separation neither via distinct buildings or time slots under Waqf regulations. Byzantine and pre-Ottoman influences. Byzantine gendered baths. Archaeological remains of Constantinople's fifth baths often suggest separate bathing zones or hours for male and female patrons, though evidence is mixed. Ceramic graffiti hints that at least some Byzantine monuments rotated gender use by day. Early Ottoman adaptations. Initial Ottoman hammams, converted Byzantine structures retained such temporal segregation. Some buildings featured separate hammam wings connected by narrow corridors, indicating early dual-use design before trend toward completely separate women's and men's bathhouses.ii. Architecture of parallel worlds. Separate structures. These staggered hours. Distinct women's hammams in many neighborhoods. Standalone women's bathhouses Mahali Hammami were constructed adjacent to schools or marketplaces. These compact buildings, often half the size of men's counterparts, centered on single domed chambers without the larger social halls seen in men's facilities. Shared buildings, separate times, grand palace hammams, and urban monumental baths. For example, Kagalaklu Galatazar allocated alternate days or hours, women from dawn until mid-afternoon, men from late afternoon until sunset. A short interlude for cleaning between sessions. Heavy lattice doors and thick walls ensured that the two groups never overlapped. Design adaptations for privacy and care-reduced visibility. Women's hammams featured fewer and smaller star holes, limiting sight lines and allowing lower lantern heights, ensuring lantern glow could be managed discreetly. Niche proliferation. Interiors included additional enclosed niches, true privacy booths, where women could bathe young children or assist elder relatives away from the gaze of other bathers. Pestimal and drapery norms. While men wore simple waist-wrapped pestimals, women's attire often included colored towels with additional overwraps or semi-opaque drapes for moving between chambers. Customs reflected in WAQF inscriptions mandating towel rack capacities and drapery storage. 3. Women's hammams. Circles of social functions and communal bonds. Motherhood and mentorship. Women's hammams served as educational hubs for young brides. Midwives coaching postpartum care. Older women teaching childcare. Soaks and healing poultices are parallel to men's. Guild mentorship in their spaces. Economic exchanges. Artisanal rings. Embroidery guilds. Spice merchants used female-only hammams for informal fairs. Stalls set up in changing rooms sold headscarves, henna dyes, and herbal remedies, turning the bath into a marketplace of women's goods. B. Healing and wellness. Gender-specific therapies. Women's hammams offered specialized treatments, fertility-boosting steam blends, postpartum separation scrubs, and mild oil massages before menses. Modalities absent or rare in men's. Bathhouses. Health surveillance. Matrons and ulama appointed health overseers conducted discreet exams checking for signs of anemia or airborne illnesses, ensuring women's health needs were monitored in a culturally acceptable setting. For men's hammams, hotbeds of politics and commerce. Guild governance and state affairs. Political salon. Men's hammams hosted informal political gatherings, local governors meeting city notables, military officers poring over campaign maps on wet benches, leveraging the steam's egalitarian flattening for frank discourse. Trade negotiations. Merchants sealed shipping contracts in men's hammams, drawing up terms on wax tablets placed atop marble benches, echoing the shoreline hammam's confidentiality but in larger chambers designed for dozens at once. B. Health and masculine rituals. Muscular therapies. Men's hammams featured larger massage slabs for wrestling champions and cavalrymen's group scrubs, rituals of solidarity and physical prowess, distinct from the gentler women's protocols. Wound care clinics. In times of conflict, Men's bath doubled as makeshift clinics tented adjacent changing rooms used for bandaging and infection control, warded off by WAQF-appointed Tellaks and military physicians. The unresolved partitionas. You stand between the curved walls of women's niches and vast chambers of men's benches, each reflecting unique social choreography. Consider this question. How did the parallel yet interwoven world of gendered hammams foster both communal identity and social equilibrium? And what lessons might modern public architecture draw from this model of carefully balanced separation and shared cultural ethos? We mapped the legal, architectural, and cultural origins of parallel hammams for women and men. Now we step into each space to observe how distinct programming, ritual pacing, and social etiquette created gender-specific sanctuaries, and yet how under the steam's volume and rhythms bound them into a shared Ottoman ethos. We'll follow a novice bather through women's hours where communal care, mentorship, and healing therapies take precedence, and compare this to the men's sequence of scrubs, counsel, and commerce. Alongside these divergent paths, we'll uncover convergence points, shared techniques, overlapping rituals, and the unifying hum of steam that made the hammam a truly integrative institution. Programming women's hammams: care, counsel, and craft day. Morning opening to midday right dawnlight. Welcome. Women's hammams typically opened at first light around 5 a.m. local time, aligned with Fajr dawn prayer. Cooler morning air slanted through latticed windows, inviting early risers and elder women seeking quiet reflection. Tellak's nators in women's hammams stoked modest fires, targeting tepidarium temperatures of a -36°C to ease transitional chills. Mother and child interlude from YYYYM. Mothers attended with young children. Alcoves near the entrance provided low-benched chambers where infants splashed in shallow basins, while midwives demonstrated gentle hip rotations and postpartum steam therapies. Herbal infusions, rosewater, and quince leaf softened both skin and spirit. The midday communal councils guild sessions from 9 o'clock to 11 a.m. Artisan circle spinners, weavers, dyers transformed changing rooms into market rows. As steam rose in central chambers, women displayed embroidered samplers, exchanged natural dye recipes, and negotiated joint orders for textiles, their voices melding with the hiss of vents.health workshops. Physicians scheduled women's clinics in adjacent private rooms at 11 a.m. Here, women consulted on menstrual care, fertility techniques, and youth-preserving scrubs. These sessions, held off slab, echoed the communal ethos of the steam chambers, reinforcing solidarity through shared wellness. See transitional interlude. Cooling courtyard at noon. Nators directed bathers to courtyard lounges, small walled gardens, with reflecting pools where they cooled with mint lemon sugar. This break balanced the morning's warmth before second-round therapies. Etiquette. Reminder announcements by draped heralds reminded women to refresh towels and modesty wraps, ensuring that privacy norms persisted even in open courtyards. Programming men's hammams: heat, counsel, and commissary. Afternoon entry to rite of scrub posties are opening. Men's hammams reopened after the ASR late afternoon prayer, around 3:30 p.m. Bright afternoon light warmed for Tellaks fed the furnaces vigorously to elevate hararet floors to Y-46°C, anticipating vigorous scrubs and muscular relaxation. Strength sessions from 4 o'clock to 6 p.m. Athletes, wrestlers, archers gathered on marble slabs. Tellaks administered deep keys, scrubs, and muscle renewal oils, ginger cinnamon blends before guided bodyweight exercises on the central slab. Blending athletic training with bathhouse therapy. Evening councils and negotiations. Merchant assemblies. Beginning at Maghrib around 7 p.m., traders and financiers convened in hararet niches. Amid rising steam, they drafted contract scrolls on wax-topped benches, sealing them with rose-scented wax. Negotiations unfolded in measured tones, the steam's hush emphasizing each word. Political salons. High-ranking officers reserved private hammam bayside chambers, carved into thick walls for secure political deliberations. Coded fan signals. 2 Tellaks marked the start and end of these confidential sessions, safeguarding both privacy and procedure. See nightcap and departure. Frigidarium finale around 9 p.m. Men transitioned to the frigidarium to plunge pools for fresh water and saline immersion timed to the sea's evening coolness. This final shock completed the thermal arc, reawakening alertness for night duties or homeward journeys. Veranda exchanges. Outside on veranda benches, men shared brine tang tea and last calls, discussing fish market trends or reporting on neighborhood watch issues. The shoreline's nocturnal hum mingled with bathhouse lantern glow, extending communion beyond interior chambers. 3 Convergence and shared practices. Despite their divergent focuses, women's and men's hammams shared core rituals that unified the institution. Thermal sequencing. Both genders progressed through tepidarium gives hararet gives keys, scrub gives oil, massage gives frigidarium, reflecting a universal Ottoman logic of warming, purging, nourishing, and cooling, adapted in pacing and intensity for gendered needs. Spatial rituals. Each hammam featured courtesy alcoves, cooling verandas and changing room spaces where social rituals, mother-child care or merchant networking occurred in microcosm, reinforcing communal bonds across gender lines. Tellak and Natır ethics. Both roles adhered to strict confidentiality oaths and professional etiquette, ensuring private matters, be they medical or commercial, remained secured by the steam's veil. Shared symbolism, star-hole domes, marble slabs, and mirror pools invoked cosmic and aquatic metaphors in both contexts, reminding all bathers that, beneath social divisions, they participated in a larger Ottoman ritual of purification and renewal. For institutional and cultural outcomes, the parallel yet intertwined worlds of women's and men's hammams yielded lasting societal structures, empowered women's networks. The early autonomy of women's hammams fostered collective leadership, seeding later women's charitable organizations and cooperative enterprises beyond the bathhouse.civic. Dialogue models, men's hammam councils, anticipated modern think tanks, demonstrating that informal, neutral venues encourage frank discourse. Lessons later enshrined in Ottoman, municipal and parliamentary spaces. Public-private balance. Gendered hammams balanced separation for modesty with shared architectural language and ritual universality, offering a model for contemporary planners on how distinct communities can maintain identity while participating in a common civic culture. Unresolved reflection as you move between the women's alcoves, warm with shared confidence, and the men's benches, vibrant with counsel and commerce. Consider this question: how can modern public and recreational spaces honor both the need for distinct communal identities and the unifying power of shared rituals, crafting environments that empower diverse groups while fostering an overarching sense of civic belonging? Legacies of parallel steam evolution, integration, and modern resonancy of walk the separate yet intertwined paths of women's and men's hammams through gendered rituals of care, counsel, and commerce. Witnessing how modesty and solidarity were balanced in parallel sanctuaries. Now, we bring Story 11 to a close by tracing how these dual spaces evolved through reform, decline, and revival, and by drawing lessons for contemporary design and community building. We'll see how Ottoman reforms codified gendered bathing, how modern pressures eroded and then partially restored parallel hammams, and how their principles inform today's quest for inclusive yet distinct communal environments. Reforming the divide Tanzimat to Republic Tanzimat era Articulations, 1839 to 1876. In the spirit of legal modernization, the 1840 Imperial Bath Regulation reaffirmed gender segregation but mandated minimum spatial standards. Women's hammams were to equal at least two-thirds the floor area of men's, addressing earlier disparities. When inspectors recorded compliance in Gazette bulletins, recognizing the public health importance of women's access to steam therapies, introduction of shared family hours once weekly late Sunday afternoons allowed mixed family bathing, under strict oversight, foreshadowing later moves toward greater inclusivity while still preserving daily separation. Early Republican secularization 1923 to 1950. The new Turkish Republic's push for gender equality led to pilot open hammams in Ankara and Izmir where mixed bathing and modern swimwear were Despite initial enthusiasm, traditionalists pressed back and the experiment was limited to specific state-run facilities. Nonetheless, women's hammams were repurposed as community health centers in many towns. Midday bathing hours became women's fitness and prenatal workshop times, integrating steamy rituals with nascent public health programs. II decline, loss, and renewal. Urbanization and private bathrooms. The post-1950 construction boom built apartments with private showers, sidelining communal hammams. Women's facilities, often smaller and less economically viable, closed at higher rates, eroding hard-won spatial equity. Men's hammams fared only slightly better, sustained by nostalgic male patronage and tourist interest. Heritage movement and feminist reclamation. From the 1990s, cultural heritage NGOs partnered with women's rights groups to restore selected women's hammams as heritage labs, hosting feminist film screenings, craft workshops, and health clinics alongside traditional steam rituals. These hybrid spaces honored the past while empowering contemporary women's networks. Contemporary wellness baths. Luxury spa designers often replicate mixed-gender bath environments with private cubicles, yet draw on gendered rituals offering, for example, women's flower steam and men's spice sweat treatments, echoing historical duality within unified venues. 3 principles for modern communal design. Calibrated separation with shared ethos. Lesson: distinct spaces can safeguard group-specific needs, privacy, cultural norms without fracturing overarching community values. Application in multicultural cities. Planners might create neighborhood centers with gender-comfortable zones, reading rooms, communal kitchens, and shared gathering halls, ensuring both tailored and collective experiences. Ritual pacing. Across groups, lesson: the hammam's thermal sequence provided a common framework that each gender-adapted. Women prioritized care and mentorship. Men emphasized strength and negotiation. Application. Public programs. For example, arts, sports, education can follow a core structure. Warm-up. Core activity. cool down while allowing each demographic to choose specialized offerings within that rhythm. Ethical stewardship and professional facilitation. Lesson Tellaks and Natrs mediated both physical and social processes, upholding confidentiality and guiding flows. Application. Modern communal spaces, co-working hubs. Health clinics benefit from trained facilitators who manage group dynamics, encourage inclusion, and safeguard privacy. Architectural signposts. For transitions. Lesson. Thresholds, doorways, bench levels. Alcovic signaled shifts in social and thermal regimes. Application. Designers can employ material and form color changes, ceiling heights, texture shifts to intuitively guide users between public and private zones, or between active and contemplative areas. For final reflection, as you envision parallel hammam domes, women's alcoves humming with shared wisdom, men's benches alive with counsel and commerce, consider how these carefully balanced sanctuaries achieved both separation and unity in crafting today's communal environments. How might we honor the need for distinct cultural or demographic spaces while weaving them into an inclusive civic fabric, ensuring that diverse groups maintain their unique rituals, yet share in common rituals that reinforce our collective identity and well-being?